skit that
Don't
they
get
did last
chocolate
week.
on
It's
the
called,
rug.
just Google SNL Spanish skit.
That's right.
It's like a high school Spanish teacher.
Okay, we need to get started, gang.
I brought them 2 transcripts
Yeah.
come in and they're fluent, right?
He gets hungry in the middle of the meeting.
It's really funny. That's all I
So,
can tell you.
okay, why don't we have a quorum, and Councillor Barnes will be joining electronically later, so we might as well get started. So I would like to call the South Burlington City Council meeting of Monday, April 17th, 2023 to order. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Let's see, who hasn't done? Andrew, have you done it? Will you start with? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Instructions on exiting the building in case of emergency. Jesse?
Thank you. So for those in the room, thank you for joining us in person. If there's an emergency, you can go out to the rear of the doors at the rear, either side of the rear of the auditorium, and to the left and right to exit. For those participating online, thank you for joining us. If you would like to speak on any agenda item, you can indicate that you would like to do so in the chat, and I'll have the chair call on you. Or you can turn your camera on and the chair will call on you. We are not otherwise monitoring the chat for content. Hey, Travis, is it possible to turn the mics in the room down a teeny bit?
No, I feel like I should be at Yankee Stadium or something.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
you can still hear me. Yes? Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to the third agenda item, which is the agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of what's posted? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda. Are there any in the audience? No? Okay, I see Roseanne. Why don't you have the floor?
Okay, good evening, councilors. And I got the memo, I have green on. So anyway, I want to talk to you about one of the most beautiful parts of South Burlington, and that's the Hubbard Natural Area and Park, once called Underwood. I know some of you were a part of the big effort we had quite a few years ago to vision what the citizens wanted of that area, then called Underwood. And as you recall, the vast majority of those that attended these visioning sessions wanted it to remain in its pristine condition. A few weeks ago, I was out walking and ran into some neighbors who told me that they had heard that the city had decided to pave over the middle part of it for a bike or walking path, and they were concerned about it, as am I. I do not know if you've made that decision. I haven't kept tabs on everything you're doing, but if you have, I really urge you to rethink that. In this time of climate change, we do not need to be adding more impervious surfaces, especially over meadows. And remember, there's an organic farm only a few feet away from where this concrete or asphalt or whatever the city or individuals have been thinking of putting down on this meadow. And there are wetlands there. That's definitely a wildlife area. But we really need to rethink, doing damage to an area this magnificent and letting it be what it is. We have had this land now. We purchased it with open space funds, so I'm not really too sure spending money, and I don't know how much money would go into paving this over, but whether that would be appropriate considering this was purchased with the lands where the intent is to leave it undeveloped. Right now, that land is costing us absolutely nothing, but it's providing natural resources to us that are saving us money. If you put impervious surfaces down, it's going to cost, I don't know how much it costs. I'm sure it's pretty darn expensive, but then you have ongoing maintenance to it. folks have been walking on that land now for 10 years, doing just well. So I really, really urge you to take a look at what the plans are for Hubbard. And if there's any idea about paving it over, please do not do that. Thank you for listening. And might I have another time to raise another issue unrelated to this?
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with our traffic lights. I have been raising this now since 2012. And every time I go into downtown Burlington and come back in the evening, I'm reminded again of how inefficient our traffic lights in South Burlington are. The major streets in Burlington go to flashing. I was just at the emergency room at midnight last week for something. Everything is fine now. But coming out on Pearl Street, on Main Street, even on Main Street, the lights are flashing. We drive into South Burlington and the intersection of Spear and Swift, nothing's around, not even rabbits, and the light is red and stays red for a long time. And that happens also on, on Dorset and Swift and all across South Burlington. If the city of Burlington can go to flashing lights, which is far more energy efficient, certainly we can do this in South Burlington. And once again, I've been saying this to 2012. Let's just put flashing lights after 8 p.m. or something and save the gasoline, the pollution, the aggravation from people waiting at a red light when nothing's around. So that's my second issue. And I'm going to keep raising it. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to give her the little update?
We'll come back and present to the full council at a future date about
Okay.
where we are with Hubbard.
All right. Is there anyone else at home or in the audience? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to councilor's announcement and reports on committee assignments, and then followed by the city manager's report. Want to start with Andrew?
Sure. Yeah. So, attended two really good meetings. One with the Energy Committee and another with the Natural Resources Committee. And both committees are working on some really important stuff, a lot of energy. No pun intended. No pun intended. So the Energy Committee is talking about an energy fair where they would have vendors, and they're also talking about some kids' activities, probably sometime in the fall. And the purpose of the fair would be to educate folks about what individuals could do to address climate change, or more about climate.
Can you put that? Yeah.
And more about our climate action plan.
Thank you.
So that's kind of exciting. We spent a lot of time also talking about a company that provides window inserts to improve the efficiency of windows, to avoid leaks around the window and to have some more R value. This company actually, it's the idea is to do it as a community service. You have volunteers that help to assemble the windows, to install the windows, and the company provides them pretty cheap. It's like $65 an insert compared to several hundred or more if you got it commercially. They need volunteers to get this going, but it sounds like it might happen. Energy Committee spent a lot of time thinking about how to make that happen. So I guess more to come there. Onto the natural resources.
I just ask you,
Sure.
are they working with like Efficiency Vermont or
No.
the CVOEO?
This is an independent, right? So
Okay.
typically, when you have your home weatherized,
Mm-hmm.
the weatherization contractor won't replace or address the windows. They focus on the attic, they focus on insulation and air sealing, but not windows. So this is kind of filling that hole.
They don't even, I thought when they had those blowers on, they checked your windows as well, and maybe they wouldn't.
They do check your windows. We did.
Yeah,
It
I
might
thought
be
they
for-
checked
Ours did.
ours.
for leakage around the edges of the windows,
Pardon
but
me?
it
Yeah.
is, for if your windows aren't sealed well in the frame, right? But the windows themselves, I don't
Okay.
think they can do much about that.
All right. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just.
Yeah, so this kind of plugs that hole. Okay, so the NRCC is working on the open space plan. They're pulling together an inventory, and it might be something we actually want to talk about, maybe provide them more targeted guidance on what the council would like to see as a work product from that inventory. But they're doing a lot of good work there, kind of inventorying all the parcels in the city. They presented that the airport is looking at doing something with the strip of land to the south that's no longer suitable for homes, and
The west.
okay, so yeah. That's no longer suitable for homes, and the proposal is still in kind of a beginning phase, but it sounds there's a nursery, tree nursery that provides the street trees for the city. Apparently through COVID, it's not it lost some of its forward momentum, and where it has capacity for 200 trees, it only has 75 trees. So that program needs some volunteers. Coupled with that, there was an idea to expand the operations. Dave Wheeler, who's the liaison to the committee, is putting in a grant to get some money for equipment to potentially even expand that operation beyond the 200 to also have trees that may be able to replant our riparian areas, so cottonwoods and things like that. So street trees plus restoration trees. And he's looking at a partner to help him do that. I'm actually working with him. I reached out to Common Roots. We're going to set up a meeting with some folks. And so there's some momentum there. We may hopefully get the tree nursery back to full operation and then possibly even expand it. So a lot of exciting stuff.
Tim?
Thank you. I attended the Economic Development Committee's meeting last week. They had a very interesting Zoom call with some folks in Woodstock that did some research on how to assist child care providers expand their capacity. And what they finally learned from this very long process was that for a child care business to add more providers, right? They had to, bring them in and then train them for a while. And so the problem was that you have the same number of kids when you have more employees, and therefore you're going to be running a deficit because you have a greater cost to your business. The money that they had available ended up acting like a bridge for that period of time when they bring a new employee on until they're able to then be able to take in more kids and increase their volume of their funds, right? How much they can charge. So there was this bridge effect that was enabled them.
Bridge loan.
It's like a bridge loan, right? And so then that also then rolled over into maybe there should be a revolving, loan fund. So a lot of great ideas came out of that, a lot of good discussion, and I think there will be more later on. I also attended the BCA meeting where we had two folks come in and ask for abatements on their property taxes. And I attended the LEAP Energy Fair in Waterbury, as did Andrew, on Saturday at Crossett Brook Middle School in Waterbury. My first time there. It was great. They have some solar panels out in a field right next to the school. And, they had a lot of vendors, solar panels. They had a representative from the Washington Electric Co-op, and I learned a new fact that Washington Electric Co-op gets most of their power from the methane generated from the Coventry landfill. Wow. I did not know that before. And then we had this very interesting discussion about, well, if you're getting it from the landfill now and you're going to get it from the landfill in the future, are we denying the landfill the components that you need to have organics to break down to create methane? And we couldn't take that conversation much further because there's plenty of garbage in the old one, right, to satisfy their need right now. So. So that was really interesting. And I also talked to a plumbing company who said that they had 10 plumbers who were coming into the journeyman part right out of high school because they had gone into the high school and recruited and had them coming through, and they were going to be joining their ranks soon. So it was a family business, and they seemed really, really psyched up about how things were going because they had new blood coming in. They had a lot of business, and they were.
This is locally, or
this was down in the Waterbury area. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was really good. And that's, I guess, all I have to report. Oh, I also did take a drive down East Terrace because a constituent had asked me about some retaining walls that were degrading. And so I've had a discussion with the Public Works about that. I'm not going to talk about it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, I attended a Charter Review Committee meeting last Wednesday, and they are ready to go. The outreach starts, I believe, this week, April 18th, and goes through mid-May. They're also going to be going to the high school and speaking to 3 high school classes because, of course, we have voters who are in the high school, and the classes' topics are aligned to civics. And I believe that they'll be taking back the information that they receive in those outreach meetings, as well as an online survey. I don't know when that goes live, but soon, I'm assuming. And we'll analyze it and then come see us, I think, by September, if I'm not wrong. And so, yeah, they've done really excellent work, and I think it will be a lot of food for thought. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot on that plate. Okay, great. Well, I also went to the BCA meeting and the Board of Abatement. I had, excuse me, a Burlington Airport Commission meeting, and the update on the sound insulation info is that Phase 2 will cover the next 53 homes, and the application to fund that has been submitted, and it will add beyond the 53 another 50. They're working on the actual map and selection now. It's ongoing right now. So that grant for the next 50 needs to be submitted by May 1st. So I can't tell you which ones have been selected, but they're working on that.
How many homes have they worked on so
There's
far?
53.
And they're working on them right now, or?
I believe so. They have the money for that, and they're submitting this grant to identify the next 50.
Okay. Have they completed any yet?
I don't believe any are completed.
When they soundproof, they also weatherize.
Well, they're working, I think, with the Efficiency Vermont, I think we hook them up with, and the Vermont gas systems to look at some of the other ways to weatherize your home so that when the workers are in there, they can do the same thing. I mean, they can do their thing at the same time. But I don't know how much has been spent or identified on that. I can follow up with that. Do you know?
I don't know how much has been spent, but Paul and I did meet with the airport director on this a week and a half ago. And if you go to btvsound.com, you can see the map of the parcels that are in Phase 1 Group 1 and Phase 1 Group 2.
btv.com.
btvsound.com.
Okay. And then, and as you read, where the name of the airport will change to the, I don't know what it is. It's not just Leahy, but maybe it's Patrick. I don't know his middle initial, Leahy International Airport. But the call number, BTV, will not change. That is very, very difficult. And so, as it is, it's going to be expensive to change all the signs and all the letterhead and all of that kind of stuff. Then I went to the Planning Commission meeting, and they have been working on, and we saw some of that other language that we'll be looking at today for potentially approval. Then they also are moving forward with discussions, and really interesting and good discussions, I think, around the comp plan. While I was there, they talked about the arts, history, and the cultural parts that included scenic views. They talked about extending the official branding for new signs around the city, what that could look like, and that might be important as part of the comp plan. And then they started on the natural resources and conservation sections with, and looking at it in the rewrite or the reorganization, I guess, for the comp plan includes looking at the landscape value as well as the resource value. So it's sort of a different lens, I guess, to look at things. And they were, well, they didn't vote on anything. They were just discussing, but there seemed to be a certain number of members who were quite interested in making sure that the comp plan really dovetails with the energy or our climate plan.
Right.
So there was, strong voice to do that and not just keep that sort of that plan and then we have this plan and never the two shall meet. What else did I do? I met with somebody else and now I can't remember. But anyway. So, city manager report.
I actually don't have much. I was going to talk about charter, but thank you, Councilor Emery, for being excellent liaison on the outreach front. I did want to share, because we talked about it I talked about it at my last city update, and you're going to hear more about the water tower project later on tonight. At our last meeting, I had shared that we had applied for a community recovery and revitalization program grant for $1 million, and the VEPSI board had approved that. We were then notified a few days later by staff that staff is not recommending it move forward to the governor, that they are deferring it to the next round of funding. And they gave us some advice on how to make it more competitive for the next round of funding. They also recommended that we apply for a Northern Border Regional Commission grant as an additional funding source. So that is on your consent agenda, the approval of that tonight. And then just again, reminder, Green Up Day is May 6th. The clerk's office has bags, so you can come in at any point and collect those during business hours. And the drop off will be May 6th between 9 and 1 at 577 Dorset, which is the school administration building. And that's all I want to share. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 6, the consent agenda. We have 6 items: the disbursements, approval of minutes, approve the settlement reached between the city and Paul Washburn, and to authorize the city manager to execute all those documents. Approve an application for a Northern Borders Regional Commission that the city manager just mentioned. Approve an application for a Teen Lit Mob grant to support programming at the library that's in conjunction with the high school. And then approve an application for a Vermont Department of Libraries summer grant program to support the library.
So
Yes.
I'll move to approve, but I would like item C to be removed since I do intend to vote differently.
Okay, you'd like us to vote on that separately?
Please.
Okay.
And may I point out that in the agenda that was released on Friday, item B does not agree with here, that
Oh,
this
that's
says
right.
approved minutes, and we don't have any minutes
That's
Oh,
to
okay.
approve. So we only have A
All
through
right,
E,
so we'll
and there's no B. So strike
eliminate
this.
B, so we'll be voting, so the motion will be on A, D, E, and F for approval.
correct.
A, D,
Is there a
E, and F.
second on that?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of agreeing to A, D, E, and F signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that passes. Then we will separately look at C, which is approving the settlement between the city and Paul Washburn. And that Megan would like to pull that out.
Yeah.
Do you want to make a comment or?
I will just say that I understand why this will be approved tonight, but I do wish to vote no simply because I do not believe that justice was served in all cases. And
Okay.
those are my sentiments.
All right. Is there a motion to approve?
So I'll move that we approve item C, which is the settlement reached between the city and Paul Washburn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Tyler isn't with us yet, is he? Okay. So we can still do just voice votes. So all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
So there's 3 ayes. Nay?
Nay.
Okay, thank you. So it passes 3-1 with 1 absent. Okay, thank you.
Top dog.
Are we ahead of ourselves?
Dog.
4 minutes, but is, we can, Oh, I didn't see Don in the back. Hey there. Okay, so let's go on to the really important issue, exciting for all of the dog and cat owners that
Parade through.
This
take
is-
the time to register
this
their
is-
pets.
Donna's creation, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Newest city councilors have to bark and meow.
Do we get to parade our pet through? Or?
No,
could.
this is just,
Yeah.
this is like the lottery. Your name is
Yes.
in there and you get picked or you don't. So this is for the city's top dog and first feline.
First feline, yes. So that time of the year again, very exciting. My staff, before I left, said, "Can you make sure you tell us who won? Who won?" I feel kind of sad about having to take down the pictures that we have there now. Zoe and Ella, great representation for last year. So just kind of get to a little bit of business first. Registration that just ended, we actually saw an increase, and I know this program is not the only reason it increased. Our staff works hard to make sure that when people come in to register their pet, that we can continue and complete the application. And so kudos to them for going the extra step. But this program, this contest is a big reason why we succeed. In times when other municipalities are going down and drastically going down, we're continuing to go up and up every year with our registration. So at this point, we have 26 more dogs registered than we had last year, 35 more cats than we had at this time last year. So, it's a nice little increase. So
Is it a COVID bump?
actually, COVID took a little bit of a decline for a year, but then it perked right back up prior to pre-COVID numbers. So
Maybe it's related to the dog park. Well, I know it's a beautiful dog park.
It
And
is.
people have a lot of pride in that. So
Mhm.
maybe they want to register their dogs to support it. I don't know.
So just to, like I said, this wouldn't be a success without sponsors. A big kudos out to Pet Food Warehouse, who gave us two $50 gift cards, one to each dog and the cat. Guy's Farm and Yard gave us 2 bags, probably 10 things of things in each bag for a dog and a cat, and they have been there since day one for us. So big gratitude to them. Some sponsors we've had over the year, Kim Provost, one of our residents, actually does beautiful paintings, and she'll actually paint an 8.5 by 8 by 10 picture of the winners.
Oh,
She
Oh,
does
wow.
gorgeous work. Yeah. And I think
cool.
those things have like a couple $100 value.
Sure.
Brown's Animal Hospital gave us an assortment of prizes. Hannaford's gave us a gift card so I can go out and buy some of the things that were kind of missing in the package. And we actually had 2 new things. Affectionately Cats brought in a crawl tunnel and some toys, obviously for cats. And then Doggy Style Salon out in Colchester actually gave this really big cow dog toy stuffy. I mean, it's really cool. So thank you to all those sponsors. And I guess I'm ready. If you guys are ready.
Okay.
Actually, because we were so fortunate with people giving donations, I have a couple of runners up that we can do. I got an extra leash, beautiful dog leash and collar.
Oh.
Gorgeous. So we'll draw a second one to get those gone. Let's start with the cats. So I just need to find somebody who wants to draw.
I'll draw.
I've been playing, and they're in big bags, so there's lots of room to shake.
May I draw?
Sure, you may.
Someone with long arms can
can
reach
stand up
down
here.
there.
But you have to meow.
See, he has no. He sounds like a cat.
Yeah.
You win a prize, Tim. Best.
Why are there no cat parks? That's why.
Yeah.
He's gonna call all the
Tag 561. Give I'll pull another one for the
runner-up.
Runner up.
tags. 561 1.
A different meow.
2 more for the cat.
One more.
223. I know. Go ahead.
And then you're going to look them up and announce, right?
618. Thank you. What was that?
You're going to announce who that is?
Yes, I've got
Good.
the
I
Right
mean,
here.
we're pretty excited.
Where's our drum roll?
So I
Yeah,
said,
we need the snare drum.
I said 561, 1.
I'm gonna write these down.
All high numbers.
I can't remember what our dog.
Okay, drum roll. 561 is owned by Jillian Rando on Bayberry Lane. And it is a, oh, a minute. Yeah, okay, I'm on the cats. I'm thinking dogs. A domestic short hair cat, orange. So congratulations.
Yay! One other time. That name sounds so familiar with a dog. Does she have a dog too? Oh, I don't care. I mean,
No,
it's-
I no.
you can win the lottery more than
Yeah,
once.
no,
Yeah.
I don't recall that name.
Okay.
So, and then if we want to do the, whoops. Computers, I hate when they think they're smarter than I am.
Never.
And a caller winner, oh, Sarah Dopp.
Oh, good for her. Yay.
And let's see, the last one for the caller is Greta Chapman.
All
The Old Orchard.
Bravo.
So, okay, so now we're on to the dogs.
Okay, Andrew, why don't you pull those?
I will, but I will not be making animal noises.
Even if you pull your own dog, we'll still count it.
He's gonna howl if he
Dog-
pulls his own
bag says
dog.
wolf on it.
Howl to the moon. Ooh.
Saved all year long. Just for-
10:55. I can just write that down so I don't forget. And then the extra caller we have.
I don't think he picked hard enough on that. You know?
602.
I think my number's lower.
Okay, let's see.
know.
Tag
I never look at
1055 belongs to Robin Cooley on Black Lantern Lane for
Great.
Sunny, who is a lab retriever. Chocolate.
Nice.
Nice. Yay.
So congratulations. I'll get in touch with all of them. Oh, and
Oh, we got one more dog.
yeah.
Or a leash or something.
that goes to Kathy Hatch on Farrell Street, Chihuahua mix. Those might be a little too big for a Chihuahua.
Wow.
We'll
we
find
have
out.
a lab and a chihuahua.
Right, the big and the small of it.
Yeah, I hope it's
Okay.
a small leash.
I know. Maybe I have to give them the
Oh,
cat
she
one.
can put it around the middle. Yeah.
So,
Okay,
A bunch.
thank
There
you
we go.
very much.
well, thank you for
And
taking the time for this.
congratulations to the winners.
Thank you.
And thank everyone for,
Paying their fee.
registering their dog, because that means that the dog is also inoculated for rabies, and that's
Right.
really important. I think we should probably have a sign to remind people at the dog park too. Is your dog
Yes.
registered? Yep, it might remind people or vaccinated or something. But I'm on the dog committee now, so I will raise it with the right committee.
Is your dog rabbit? It's probably not.
Is your
the best
dog
sign.
rabid? Yeah. Please don't
People will
enter.
think, a rabbit.
Okay,
dog is
we
not
will move on to number 8. Thank you, Donna. And this is, we're going to receive a presentation on needed water storage capacity. So we have Tom DiPietro and the team who help him. We need another chair up front.
Tom, there's one over there. You guys can pull over. Or you can do that.
You can pull the comfy chair over.
What?
'Cause-
Oh,
It's either
yeah.
the input or it's
sorry.
the output, but they're both bonds, big bonds.
So as Tom's pulling this up, this is a precursor to town meeting day, so very far in advance, but some work to do between now and then. So no action needed tonight, but we wanted you to know the work that was ongoing in advance.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Tom DiPietro, Director of Public Works. Excited to be here to talk about water towers. It's not as exciting as First Dog and First Cat, but we'll do our best to keep the excitement up tonight.
Second water tower, right?
It's the second water tower, yeah. So joining me this evening are two engineers from Aldrich and Elliott, Jeff Lewis and Jason Booth. They've worked on our water system for decades now, and they're very familiar with it. Also joining us is Jay Nadow with our water department, and Joe Duncan with the Champlain Water District, who supplies our water. So we've got a great water team here to answer all your questions and kind of go over a few things this evening. So as Jesse said, our objectives are pretty simple this evening. We just want to update council on the project's history and its current status, discuss kind of the current project actions and where we're at, answer any questions the council or the public may have to help better understand the project and the need, and lay the framework for kind of the next steps in the project, including potentially a bond vote on town meeting day 2024. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. He'll go through some of the specifics of the project and come back for questions at the end.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having us. As Tom said, I'm Jeff from Aldrich and Elliott. Basically, just wanted to give you a basic overview and just kind of start with your water system. I think it seems like you guys have a pretty high knowledge already based on some of the discussion topics that have come up. But citizens of South Burlington get their water from Lake Champlain, treated through CWD. It comes from the source, goes into CWD for water treatment, and is pumped by CWD into the distribution system. CWD, who is represented by Joe and Jay here tonight, provide the treatment, and basically the city is responsible for the distribution. So water comes from them, goes into your own storage tanks, and gets to all of your fine citizens. And that's the basic idea. What we're talking about tonight is not water treatment, it is the water storage that we're really focused on to get from the tank into your customers. So water tanks, why do we have them? What does a water tank do? This will be my explain to me like I'm 5. Why do we have a water tank? There are two main purposes for what we're looking for from a storage tank as part of the system. One is to provide storage so that you can meet your daily needs, so that we're not having to constantly pump from the water treatment facility all the time. You guys have the storage to meet the needs that are currently there. That includes both your usual usages, like getting water for your day-to-day usages, and also emergent uses such as fire flow. When you have a fire and you need to hit the hydrant hard, you want to make sure you don't run out of water for everybody else when that's going on. And that also extends to emergencies such as having enough for prolonged power outages, what have you. Storage, that's the number one, and it's in the tank, in the name of a storage tank. Number two is not as well known, it's water pressure. And basically the way that works is if you're holding a stack of books, the higher the stack of books is, the heavier that stack is going to get. So when you have a water system, the higher you put your water, or the bigger you build that water column, the heavier that water column gets and the higher your system pressure is. So we have to meet both the storage need and the system's pressure needs by basically balancing those two needs out. I haven't lost anybody yet, so it's a good night. Project needs. So why are we before you tonight? You have in your system you have basically two service areas. We're going to discuss one of them tonight. I'll get a little bit more into that, but currently within that system you have utilized about 98% of the storage capacity in that tank. Every day the tank uses about 1.4 million gallons. The city has already given away or allocated 500,000 gallons or so, 499,000 gallons of water. There's an allocation that goes to Shelburne, and then there's also the fire flow demand that's up there. So you have that tiny silver sliver is basically all that's not currently allocated or being used by your system. The water supply rules in Vermont require that you plan for expanding your storage or treatment capacity once you reach 90% of your capacity. You guys are beyond that, and then they require that you basically kind of get going. So the concern here is that we don't want to over allocate the city and have to stop all of the great development you guys have been working on. We'd hate to have water be the thing get in the way of all the great things that you guys are trying to do. As I mentioned, here's a basic overview of the city of South Burlington. That big blue blob that's there, that's what's known as the high service area, and that's one pressure zone, and that's all that we're talking about tonight. There's a lot of development that's ongoing there, including the city center, U-Mall, the Wilson Road corridor, and a couple of other ongoing projects such as the O'Brien Estates, On Logic, Beta, things that you guys have been talking a bunch about. And then that little red area is another service area. And this kind of comes down to that pressure need. basically the big blue blob is at a higher elevation, so we need to keep that at a higher pressure to get all those people serviced. And the little red blob is at a lower pressure, so that's serviced by 2 different tanks. So we're talking about that big tank that's that's indicated by that small star, and that's the South Burlington East Storage Tank. This tank has an effect on all of their surrounding areas and is connected in certain ways. But the important thing to notice is that we're just talking about the blue section that is what we're talking about tonight. So just a little bit of background on how we got here. In 1971, that's when the city first built the tank, the South Burlington East Storage Tank. That worked out pretty well for quite a while. Didn't really have to do much for it until 2001. A feasibility study was conducted by our firm. And we looked at the time at needing increased storage. The usage in the area had gone up and you guys were having a similar problem. Evaluated a number of alternatives, including building another storage tank or expanding the existing tank, which is what we ended up actually doing. They raised the tank up, which was a great solution at the time, but that's kind of a one-time deal. We can't really raise it any higher. We'd make the pressure too high, and it's just not really economically feasible to raise the tank a second time. It wouldn't really work. So we used that strategy last time. We also so that kind of solved that from that 2001-2004 period. A number of sites were identified as put up there. Throughout the years, the city has continued to look at these sites. In 2017, they updated your master plan. Again, some alternative sites were evaluated. The city continued to look at alternative sites for water storage. And we really kind of sat down again in 2019 and wrote another memo that looked at the feasibility of constructing a second site. At this time, there is no other real alternative site that is available to the city to develop. So you guys have your existing site to work with, which is great in some ways. You don't have to build a long water line to connect to the existing system. It's all right there. But that just kind of limits your options long term. So with this project, we really want to think long term, 2070, really want to make sure that we have this handled for now and for the future.
Just want to add one thing real quick, Jeff. So 7 sites.
Excuse me, do you mind standing over there and turning the, make sure the light is bright green? Thank you.
So 7 sites were evaluated, and early on, all but the existing tank site and the Eclair site were ruled out. Really had a lot to do with elevation, as Jeff mentioned earlier, the pressure issue. So adding an additional tank ruled out 6 of the alternative sites that were reviewed, and the Eclair site was the last remaining tank where there was some potential. However, given there's nothing there now, and the new property owners, I believe, were not on board with having a tank constructed there. So that was the last alternative. And back to Jeff's point, the existing site, you own it. There's a tank there already. And there's room to put a new tank, and it seemed with the infrastructure there to be the best available location.
Thank you.
And so we evaluated that, and I guess to complete the thought, we evaluated that with a preliminary engineering report that we finished at the beginning of this year. We finalized that and submitted that to the state. What's known as step 1 engineering, kind of finishing the planning, evaluating of alternatives, and now we're proposing that you guys move into step 2 and kind of get the ball rolling on moving this forward. So what we're talking about is what was evaluated in that preliminary engineering report. When we're talking about a storage tank of this size, what options exist, and when I say of this size, in order to meet the pressure requirements that we talked about earlier, the tank needs to be approximately 130 feet tall on the existing site. So that's a pretty big tank, a pretty tall tank. There's not a ton of options as far as what would really fit that bill. The two main options are a standpipe tank, which is exactly what you guys have there now, and that's displayed on the left-hand side there, and that stores water throughout the entire tank, with the top part being at the elevation that we need usable. And the second option is an elevated spheroid tank, and that's a big, wide ball basically that has all the water up where it needs to be, but based on the configuration and geometry, would be much wider and would be equally tall, but would end up being a much wider tank than what we're proposing as far as this. We're recommending that you guys construct a standpipe tank just based on some other things that we're going to discuss as we go through. So one of the main questions that we looked at for this is what size tank should we construct? You guys have allocated about 98% of your current capacity. should you just build a smaller tank and just try to basically meet your long-term and your short-term and your long-term needs with the smallest tank possible? Should you build a tank the exact same size and basically make sure that you never have this problem again? Were the two real questions that we had. So we evaluated building a 1 million gallon tank that would pretty much meet exactly your needs. If you look up there, it would account for about 93% of the anticipated storage by the year 2070, or build a tank that would be the same size as your current tank and give you it would have a total capacity that would be about 70% of your needs. So you guys would be well under that recommended allocated use of 90% action level. I guess the quick takeaway here is that the construction costs between the two would be, you'd have $1 million of difference, but on a per gallon per storage basis, it would cost significantly less. It'd be $2 about per gallon as opposed to $3.34 per gallon to construct the larger tank. So given the long-term needs and given the available space and you guys not having any other spaces, we're recommending that you construct for the full 2.1 million gallon capacity. That also has some advantages when it comes to water quality and having flow come out of the tanks at the same rate, and just basically solving long-term needs while also kind of matching what's needed in the short term. What was that? And redundancy. So by building a 2.1 million gallon tank, you'll have two tanks of the same size. So if you ever take one tank off of line, you have 100% redundancy right there on site, so that if long-term maintenance is ever required, you're not going to have to worry about, oh, we only have the small tank, we better do this quick.
Okay.
Yes. So here's the proposed site. It's, as you can see, it's a neat little site. One of the things to note is, since we're showing a standpipe tank, it would fit right on the exact same, it would fit on the existing footprint. There's not really anticipated any need to acquire any additional property. You might need to bump the easement out a little bit, but we're not looking at a massive expansion of the current site. One thing to note is if we were to go with the elevated spheroid type tank, you would need to basically, it's about twice the width. So it would really change the landscape. It really change the way that this site would be utilized. Which is another reason why we kind of pushed this project more towards considering a standpipe. It'd be a new 53-foot diameter, 127-foot tank with a 2.1 million gallon capacity, and would increase the storage capacity for the high service area up to 4.2 million gallons. That's the proposed project. Dorset Street is going to be right over to the right. That's basically an access drive there. I think I have a better photo in just to give you an idea. I don't know if you can see my cursor. This is the tank, and Dorset Street basically runs up and down this way.
Could I just interrupt too?
Of course.
So are we going to have two tanks standing side by side?
Correct. It'll look kind of like that.
Okay, and the one that we currently have is 2.1 million gallons?
That is correct.
And the 2.1 million additional minimum is based on us doubling in size population-wise, or?
Nope. So right now you guys have, and let me see if I put this onto a slide. I did not. So right now what you guys have, as far as your usages go, you use approximately 1.4 million gallons per day. Mm-hmm. We made an estimate given your current growth and assuming that you kind of have this allocated capacity. I believe that your required usage goes up to a number that I don't have on a slide any longer. The actual required it's above 2 million. I have to look at it. I apologize, I don't have the exact number. It's not a pure one-to-one growth. Thank you. Your actual demand total, and this number is actually a little bit higher, but we estimate that you're going to have a required storage of about 2.88 million gallons. So if you were to add a million gallons per se.
By 2070?
By 2070, looking at it, that's the anticipated demand. So just shy of 3 million gallons, let's say. And so the name of the game is to make sure that you have sufficient capacity to not get close to any of those, that 90% trigger or that 80 or any of those triggers that you have to consider adding additional storage on top of that.
The pressure of the taller tank too, and matching it.
But it does seem to suggest that we're going to be doubling in size. What am I not understanding?
So, no.
But
so
more than that, just before the allocated capacity, is that all the homes are in the pipeline?
Those are everything that the city is currently allowed to build. There's a water supply rule that does that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a lot of projects in the pipeline,
Right.
And we allocate out. So as a project gets proposed, it gets its water allocation. So that's everything we've approved so far to date. To get into the specifics of which projects or not have approvals, that we'd have to kind of go back and look at a larger spreadsheet. But I will note some things that the housing that's been approved is under construction right now next door. So the top floors, the residential portions of those do have an allocation. The bottom floor, where the commercial space is, does not currently have its water allocation. And they would come back for that when they have tenants. So it's sort of a mishmash of which projects are currently have their allocation.
So it's not. It's slightly decoupled from a pure population extrapolation. The population will increase. The anticipated usage just based on your population is around where you're at now with the it's 2.25 or so MGD is I think what I estimated your average daily use. On top of that, you're going to continue to have a fire flow requirement that you're going to need to have. That brings the number all the way up to approximately 2.7 million gallons per day. And then on top of that, you have some additional allocations that we assume will remain, such as you have an interlocal agreement with Shelburne, and there are other allocations that you could potentially have. I guess at the end of the day, in 2070, we estimate that right now, given your current projected growth, that you guys would have about a required storage capacity of just under 3 million gallons per 3 million gallons. It'd be like 2.8 or whatever I said there, if that makes any sense.
For the daily use of residents and
For the
businesses?
daily use and for needing all of that extra capacity that you need, such as fire flow, and for all of your additional allocations that you guys currently have out of your tank.
It would be less than a third of a million gallons per day. How would it be just under 3 million gallons per day?
So currently it's going up. I apologize for not having that number.
Go back here, go ahead.
That'd be great. So currently you guys, this is your current usage, right? You guys, this big blue thing is 1.4 million gallons per day. That's currently what's used.
Okay.
About 500,000 gallons or 500,000 gallons is going to come into usage. So that's right under 2 million gallons per day.
Yeah.
That number is not going to grow exponentially. We anticipate that number will land right at about 2.3 or 2.4 million gallons per day. So that number continues to grow. On top of that, there's a fire flow demand. This fire flow demand is underrepresented on this graph, but that fire flow demand can be quite large. So to plan for that, let's call that 500,000 gallons, which is about what that needs to be. That brings that number up to about 2.8 million gallons. And then you have some other random usage that are like some other allocations that are very small. So calling it about 2.8 million gallons is about where we're at.
Yep.
The actual number that we came up with for the 2070 number, I think I put on that slide, was 2.9 million gallons per day is the estimated required storage in the year 2070 for all of those needs. Does that make sense?
And our capacity with building a second tank would be 4 million?
So your capacity with building, and that's why we're trying to figure out what size to make that second tank. So we evaluated basically two main things. One, adding 1 million gallons of storage, which would put your total capacity at 3.2 million gallons. And one, adding a tank the same size, which has some other benefits, and having it be 4.2 million gallons. So all of that said, if you build a second tank of the same size, then you're going to have approximately 70% of your tank is going to be used or needed for your current storage, which is a good, comfortable level to be at. There's other things that we evaluated, such as tank turnover. You want your tank to turn over no more than like approximately every 3 days. So we don't want to make it you don't want to make it too big where like it's not turning over. And you also don't want it to be too small. It's not ideal to have your tank being used every single day. That's not really providing you with the storage that you guys need if anything were to happen to the great folks at CWD.
What do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
Joe can probably speak more to that.
You pump to that tank that exists today several times a day. You fill it several times. Let's hear the story of the tank.
So Joe's the expert on that. They're pumping almost constantly, but Joe can talk about
constantly.
that.
Okay.
Well, I'll just say to follow up on the question.
Will you just tell the audience
Oh,
who's
sure.
speaking?
I'm Joe Duncan with
Thank you.
Champlain Water District General Manager. Great to see everybody. To answer the question, in 2070 you'll need about 3 million gallons a day, up from the 1.4 that you're at today. The proposal is to put 4.2 million gallons of storage there, basically doubling the storage you have now from going from 2.1 to 4.2 by putting a twin 2.1 in there. And the reason is tying in the original piece that you're out of tank sites. So if you're going to build a small tank now, there's a good chance you'll be kicking yourself in the future at $2 a gallon to have built a 1 million gallon tank now to get you where you need to be when you can build a 2.1 twin. There's a lot of hydraulic benefits there from an operation standpoint, as well as that's from a CWD perspective, selfishly, which you don't need to, you know, it's great to work with you on, but if you're wearing your hat only, looking at it and saying, if I was the city, I would not want to be out in 2070 wishing I had built 2.1 when I only built a 1 million gallon tank. That's basically what's being
But
presented
my,
to you
my
here.
question is, I mean, if the tank is emptying, you pump and you fill it. So argue with me why you need a second tank. If your tank is emptying, just fill it again.
Sure.
What's
Well,
the
water
difference?
supply rules say that what happens if the line from CWD is down? What happens if power is down? What happens if there is no source pumping? If you go back to that drawing, there is no water coming from the source from the treatment plant into South Burlington. So every community, one of the things that Jeff, you know, to keep things simple, didn't get into is the water supply rules require you to have 24 hours of storage available to you in the event that your source is not available to fill that tank.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
The 24 hours, because you would drain the tank in 24 hours.
That's correct. Yep.
Right.
So
We wouldn't drain this tank in 24 hours today.
Currently, you would drain it very quickly. You would drain it in about a day and a
Day
half
and a
or
half.
so.
Day and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have that 24
Assuming it was
hours
full when we
capacity
started.
currently.
Do you get added benefit with two tanks in case one needs maintenance?
Correct.
Okay.
It is a real struggle right now to rely solely on the transmission system when that tank is offline and it happens every 5 to 10
Well,
years.
in 2017, you emptied the tank and cleaned it out and painted it, right?
Yes.
And it was down for a couple of weeks, right?
About 2.5 months.
That long?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So in the interim, you guys were entirely reliant on CWD's pumps the
Just pump it.
entire time. So
Right.
if they ever had
Yes.
a problem, which they have great redundancy, it's not likely, but it's something we have to plan for, then it's not ideal for the city to have to rely on that forever.
Interestingly, as a frame of reference, that little red area that you saw, which is main service, that serves basically Shelburne Road at a lower elevation, that has actually two tanks. So it's your very small service area actually has the redundancy that you currently need. Your large area does not, and that's been kind of a focus over time of some of the studies. If you look back at some of the plans that have been done.
Well, aesthetically, I like the two towers, but
Yeah.
the red service area, how much do those tanks hold?
Ooh, now you're testing me. I think each of those is a 500,000 gallon tank, but that's a report that I haven't looked at in a little bit.
2 500,000 gallon tanks.
Okay.
Those
And
are
then
rep-
have you worked with Shelburne? Are they satisfied with moving forward at 81,000 gallons? I mean, they're a growing community as well, certainly not as fast as ours, but.
We did reach out. At this time, they said they're all set with their current allocation. They're using not all of it, but most of it. Jay, around 70,000, Jay, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
But perhaps in the future, they may need more and they could call us at that
70, it
point.
might be different, yes?
So you guys would have good long-term flexibility as well. Part of giving you some extra storage is giving you guys the ability to have unknowns occur and not be needing to look for another tank to need to be constructed.
And since the water district is almost all of Chittenden County, isn't it? Or almost every community, is there, with this kind of redundancy or as well as the excess capacity, does that allow us to support another community? If something happens to one of their water towers or, I don't know.
It does provide some flexibility within the area because there are, without getting into too much detail, there's a pressure zone that pretty much goes from South Burlington through Williston, Essex, up to a portion of through Colchester to a portion of Milton that is all on the same gradient. So this tank definitely does set the bar for the gradient throughout the county. So you could certainly have some advantage in having some extra storage in that tank when needing to move water around. If someone is, say, Williston Industrial Ave has a break and they need, there's no other way to get water over there, and our pumping system was out.
Yeah. So besides Shelburne, have we ever had an agreement with another community to provide them some water?
No, there is a relationship with Burlington on an emergency basis with providing some water back and forth, mostly at the
Jug handle.
jug handle. Thank you.
Okay. Are there Other questions?
Yeah, two things.
We have a couple more slides to
Oh, I'm
get through, I
sorry.
think,
Keep
if you
going.
guys,
Yeah.
you know,
Pardon
and
me.
then, yeah.
You guys hit
Lester,
on
your
the hottest
question is on
question, which
this
is what
slide.
size to make this tank, which is one that we struggled with a lot. But I feel like that's yeah, which is it's a fair point to be asking about. But it's
Just how
I
did you
think we're
get to
there.
that number?
And
I still don't know,
yep,
but
Maybe
you
before
just
we just move on to the cost, just how do you, why do you estimate the fire capacity like going up tenfold?
so this is a good question. So basically, in order to look at fire flow capacity, there's a couple different sources out there. The short answer is there's a requirement that you guys provide, that the city provides 3,500 gallons per minute for 3 hour duration, which I think comes out to, it's over 600,000. It's 630,000 gallons. That's the full storage requirement. Most cities and towns, they would have to provide all of that themselves. That's what they would be required to carry. As mentioned, you guys have the benefit of being directly attached to CWD's massive pumps. So the state has allowed you to count that as a fire flow credit, which takes the burden off of the storage tank. The amount of the burden that is taken off of the storage tank is slightly debatable and has changed in recent years and may decrease more in the future. The reason why I threw 500,000 out there is just to say if you guys had to in the future carry all of it, even without that, with your current allotted fire flow capacity that you have to carry, that's where the estimate is around 3 million gallons. That's what I'm currently assuming. Talking about not planning for or planning for future, who knows what's going to happen. There is an additional fire flow capacity that may need to be required by the city some point in the future that it'd be really handy to have this available in the storage tank for, that we're not currently leaning on. But to answer your question, I guess currently there's, based on their fire flow credit and the fire flow requirement, it's about 135,000 gallons of storage that needs to go towards fire flow currently.
And does Shelburne pay us for the allocated capacity? Like, do we lease that? And if we have excess capacity, because we'll have a lot of excess capacity if we build this extra tank, is there a possibility to lease that capacity to?
So, yes, they paid us for the construction value at the time. And if they were ever interested and we had the capacity, we could entertain doing that again. I'd be happy to share that agreement with council. Just take a look at it if you'd like.
So will they be part of the second tank?
They will not. No, we asked them if they'd like to participate, if they wanted more storage, and they said they were good for now.
Okay.
And I think you had indicated that you still didn't understand the water quality and why that would make a difference.
No, I don't understand the assumptions that go into us needing to double.
I'd be happy to provide the report that kind of walks through exactly what all of what we're talking about. I guess the last point that's kind of there, if you were to have a small tank next to a big tank, the draw off from those two tanks will be different. So even if they're mixed perfectly, which isn't usually achievable, you'd have very different water ages in the two different tanks, and there's ways they can try to avoid that. But we want to avoid a situation where we have two different tanks with two different ages that are going to have a water quality issue of really old water entering your system and having other problems. So that's I guess the last little piece I'd like
Aesthetics
to
and utility.
kind of end there for that.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just fill both the same amount, right?
They will always be at the same level. That's how the water.
So if one was shorter, the big, you
That's
never
the
use
problem.
the top part of the big one, right?
Yeah, the shorter tank, it wouldn't actually do anything for it. Would just be a dead space that would just kind of sit. So you
Right.
have to build them at
So
the
that-
same height so that they actually both get used.
So that wouldn't add to our capacity. I mean,
It
if you
would.
and
It
I
would
can
just
fill
add.
both of them halfway. One full, the short one,
It
and
wouldn't.
the
It would
big
add
one
dead capacity.
halfway. We're not.
Yeah, you wouldn't add any usable capacity there because once it dropped to where the system wasn't using it, then it would never get used. And that's part of why you need one of these two types of tanks.
Helen, that's an important point, though, I think, that you made. Yeah, if they're different sizes. Yeah. So,
Into the project cost and how much this would cost, we estimate currently that the construction of the tank will be $4.3 million. Given how everything has been these last few years, I don't know if the construction industry has been increasing very, very rapidly. We've also included a 15% construction contingency for $648,000. We've already completed the preliminary engineering study that's listed there at $23,000. There's proposed engineering services for final design and permitting. The city has currently put out a request for qualifications for an engineer to do that final design. And then there's based on the state revolving fund curve, there's a maximum amount that could be applied for there at about $260,000. Required engineering for construction phase services is at about $450,000. Other costs such as administration, Tom's time, the permitting, all that kind of stuff is estimated at about $24,000 for a total project cost that we're recommending of $5.75 million. Impact on the rates, how would this impact your users? Currently, we're assuming that the city is not going to qualify for any grant or subsidy funding. As noted earlier in this meeting, you have applied for some grants, including the Northern Borders that you guys just applied for, which will hopefully help. We anticipate that this project will go through the Drinking Water SRF program. That program would provide a 2% loan over a 30-year term, and we estimate that the annual repayment would be approximately $257,720 per year. For your average user, looking only at the usage fee, our firm is currently doing a usage and rate analysis for the city, which could also play how this works. Under those assumptions of just looking at the current fees, we anticipate that the current user would see an increase of about $19.38 per year for this project.
For 30 years.
Yes.
Except other things go up in cost too, right?
And except that this does not include any future growth. So it's assuming stagnant growth.
It assumes
right.
your
So
current
more
user
people would
base
pay for
covering
it.
all
Yeah,
everything.
okay.
Correct. And just through their user fee as well, which is not necessarily how you'd have to build this project. Whoever's doing your final, we could help you look at, or somebody could help you look at and see how you want to do that. Project timeline, we finished the PR in January. Currently, the city is selecting a step 2 engineer. The most aggressive timeline has you guys starting final design in May, finishing final design in about December, getting through the permitting process optimistically, looking to start construction in April. You would need to conduct a bond vote for a project of this size that would involve more public outreach, more questions, and more making sure that everybody's on the same page. And looking at getting going in May and finishing construction in December of 2024 with a 1-year warranty in December of 2025. Yes. Any additional questions or anything else that we can help clarify? I know that I've taken up a lot of your time already,
But
but
we've asked a lot of
Yeah.
questions.
I'd
we
be happy
beat you to
to
that
continue to
punch.
discuss anything that's unclear.
Would it be possible to have the excess capacity serve the main service area and not utilize those 2 small tanks, or would that save money, and is that feasible?
What is your question? Not
We have these 2 small tanks in this other area of the city.
in the red area.
So we're gonna have all this capacity now at a very high elevation. Could you just have one site
They
that
probably don't have the pressure, but
No, it's
You
hard.
have excess pressure is kind of the problem there. So there is theoretically a way to do that with
It'd be
PRVs.
too much pressure. Is that the point?
It'd be too much pressure. Your stack of books is too high for that area. It'd just crush that area. So Jason can talk on that.
Be a really good
fire
shower.
hose coming out of
A
your
really
sink.
good shower.
Okay, is the mic on?
I'm sorry. Those 2 service areas are disconnected at this point. There's pressure reducing zones between those 2. So interconnecting them might be a little bit more challenging hydraulically. And that is a lower service area. So the pressures would be excessive for what's in that area. And then you still have those 2 tanks, which are on a different hydraulic gradient at this point. So I think that'd be a little bit challenging interconnecting those. Joe? Jay, any?
Good question, but
You have 1 million gallons of storage in the low. You'd be adding an additional 1 million gallons of excess capacity in the high. You'd be handcuffing yourself in the main service ultimately long term. The other piece is I think that you're going to wind up. They're currently not interconnected. So any money you're going to spend to try and save on putting in a smaller tank or eliminating those tanks, you're going to spend in putting in infrastructure that, and anybody who knows water systems and runs PRVs, you're gonna hate having to operate those PRVs over operating.
Pressure reducing valves.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Pressure reducing valves. My bad. Yeah. Too much lingo. Those pressure reducing valves would not be reliable and not really a good long-term solution when you have the 2 tanks. It wouldn't be recommended in the end. Although a very good idea in consideration, but it certainly is not something we would recommend.
okay.
So-
Are there other questions by the
Yes.
council?
Is this a candidate for an impact fee?
Yes.
So the way we would fund the project going forward from our user fee standpoint too is we sell those allocations that we spoke of earlier. So we would set those allocations such that we could pay back the loan with them if development goes as planned. So there's not, that is sort of the impact fee. It's when you build your new development, you pay for that allocation, which you're basically paying for that capacity.
We should have done that 10 years ago, and then we would have had all the money,
I'm sorry,
right?
are
I
you
mean, if
saying
we had
that-
had an impact fee with the understanding that in 2024, we need to double our capacity, we could have been collecting that all along.
That's sort of what the allocation fee is. That's the impact fee. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. It's kind of there already. I will note that our rates are really low currently, and we're looking at that in the rate study you keep hearing me talk about when I come here. We're working on that. Hopefully talk to you about it soon, but yeah.
Tom, when you say paid for with the allocation, you mean because the anticipated growth of the city will bring everyone's rates back down to where they are? Is that what you mean? When you say it's paid for already through the allocation,
Can you describe the allocation
Yeah.
fee, what that is?
what that means?
Yeah, sure. So let's say you're building a new home or a new building. You have to have so much water capacity per day. And that's calculated through the state rules. There's ways you calculate that. So you pay the city a rate, the allocation fee rate for those gallons per day. And that's how the way
Like we all pay. Is
so,
that
so that's the user fee. So then there's the typical user fee where if you use X gallons of water per day, you pay for every 1,000 gallons, you pay a certain rate. So two separate fees we have.
Permit fee. So
it's really like an impact fee.
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, so there's already a permit fee on new construction?
Yes.
For this.
For an yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's an allocation fee. It's not an impact.
It's not an impact fee.
Oh,
But it's
okay.
like an impact.
Okay,
Yeah.
is
It's
that
an
right?
allocation impact fee.
Okay,
So it's a one-time fee that you pay when you're initially connecting to the system. There's an allocation fee that you pay to
That makes sense.
for the
Okay.
allocation.
And it's anticipated that the sum of those for what's in the pipeline
Which I
will be enough to pay this bond. Is that?
We'll pay back, the bond payments. Yep. And then everybody still pays the user fees. That pays for all the ongoing maintenance. And we purchase water from CWD. It pays for that.
So the $20 that I showed that goes up for everybody's fee a year assumes that it all goes onto the usage fee. So that's up to you guys to decide how you would like to actually implement that, or I guess Tom or whoever's doing that.
See those numbers with
But-
this allocation fee folded in. So what's like the real cost to?
But
taxpayers?
currently, we're just assuming it goes onto the user fee. So
Okay.
the city has a number of ways that they can reduce that burden on the user. We are trying to show the most conservative
No,
estimate.
but
of how
it's
going to
automatic. There is an allocation fee. I mean, it's not like we choose to impose it, right? It exists already.
It exists already, and we're going to talk about that when we come back with the rate study.
Okay.
So, Councilor Chalnick, you'll get a good opportunity
Thank
to
you.
dive into those numbers much as you'd like soon. Yeah.
are there other questions by counselors?
Last comment. Can we paint the second tank a different color than the other tank?
Good luck getting that
Can
for
my
the Act
wife get up
250.
there on a scaffolding and paint the rest
Oh,
of
is
the
that
tank?
an Act
Oh,
250
she wants to do
determination what
murals?
color?
And we do what they did in Boston at the natural gas
Or
facility,
down at,
right?
That would be nice.
what's the car place? Dealer.com.
Oh, yes,
Painted
yes.
Sobo blue.
Yeah, we could.
At council's direction, we could propose certain things, but this goes through the Act 250 process, and there are aesthetic considerations as part of that.
I'll bet there are. Okay, we have one person in the audience, and then Roseanne Greco online would like to comment. Do you want to come up and make your comment or question, or?
Oh, and I just want to note to the council that Tyler is here as well.
Oh, okay.
Apologies for the delay.
Well, I'll give you a chance, Tyler, after we hear from the public.
Lisa Yankowski, I live in Queen City Park. Over 1 million gallons is a hell of a lot of water. What's that going to do to the lake? And does any of this construction involve your main site in the pump house area? Because that could impact my neighborhood in a very big way.
So I'll take that one. That's the Champlain Water District's pump area, and nothing's proposed. This project's not going to impact that at all.
Because in the past, every time they've done something,
Okay,
This-
thank you. Roseanne Greco.
Yes, counselors, this is the cost of development. Obviously, I hope you got that. But I think this would be a great opportunity to talk about water and the natural resource that water is, which is finite. I know you're only talking about storage tank and you're not talking about the availability of water, Lake Champlain, or the quality of that water. But imagine what it would be if we talked about reducing our use of water. We are very, very wasteful in how we use water, and other parts of the world are suffering from droughts, and their projection is with climate change, we may be in the future too. So I really hope you could use this opportunity to take a real broader environmental climate crisis focused look on water, and whether or not we need, we don't need, but evaluate what our water usage is. The more you have, the more we're going to use. And I think it's past time we talk about this, and not just, can we afford it economically, build it, and we'll use more. So I urge you to take this issue as an opportunity to weigh it against the climate crisis. And what does this mean for it? And what does natural resource of water mean to us? And can we reduce it?
Thank you. Tyler, were you here for the presentation, or did you just join? I want to give you the opportunity to ask questions, but
I appreciate the consideration. I was not here for the presentation, so I'm not prepared to.
okay. Well, this isn't the final decision. This was just informational. So
Understood.
okay.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Last one. So if we have to build a second tank, what does the Champlain Water District have to do by 2070 to increase their ability to process water from the lake and pump it? Do they have, you just built a new storage tank like 4 years ago, right? Take that one.
Good question.
So Champlain Water District draws water out of Shelburne Bay, 33 billion gallons of water in Shelburne Bay. We are rated to treat 20 million gallons a day out of Shelburne Bay. We currently pump about 9.5 million gallons out of our facility. So we're not anywhere near the capacity of we can use that plant as well as draw out of it. The way storage works in our systems is because Burlington County and the rest of Vermont loves local control. We own the storage tanks. We own the shells of the storage tanks. We do own the 4 tanks that are in, the 3 tanks that are in South Burlington. We would require the city of South Burlington to construct this tank to our standards in order for it to be turned over to us. The way it works is the volume in those tanks is yours. Probably sounds a little strange, but the volume that's in there is the city of South Burlington has to figure out where they want to put their growth, because each community likes their own local control to be able to say, I have this much water that is mine that I can decide where I want to put growth within my community. So as far as CWD is concerned, we have a plant that's rated for 20 million gallons a day. We're currently only doing 9.5 million gallons a day. So the growth that we foresee around the county, we don't anticipate being anywhere near the limits of our plant within the 2070 timeframe. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
I would note, I don't know how many years ago it was, but didn't you receive a national award for the cleanest water, or the best tasting water or something?
Tasting Water in North America People's Choice Award in 2015
Right.
at the AWWA conference.
Right. So we want to keep up that quality. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
probably see you again sometime. Okay, so Tom, don't go too far. Oh no, no, it's Erica. Excuse me. Are you going to
So-
sit with Erica? Our next item is the traffic request evaluation guidance.
Driver's side.
So while they're setting up for this, I do want to do a little bit of table setting, as this is kind of we don't usually bring you presentations like this, but because what Erica and Tom are going to present to you has such an nexus to constituent requests that you all get and to the budget that you will consider in the future, we wanted to make sure you were aware of it and were bought in, and that you had the opportunity to provide input before we implemented this modernization.
Okay.
Great,
Well,
thank you
welcome.
for that. Thank you for that, Jesse. I'm Erica Quallen, Deputy Director of Capital Projects at DPW. So, So tonight, like Jesse said, we're going to be presenting to you the process we've been going through to update the way we handle and process traffic requests that come in from the public. This isn't related to any specific project. It's just based on historically how DPW has processed these requests. It's time for a bit of an upgrade. And I forgot to mention, I'm not sure if he's here, but Israel Maynard from Stantec, he's here. He is joining us virtually for any questions to jump in. He has been on the consultant team in developing this process with us. So a little bit of background on how this came to be. Public Works, we get a lot of requests from the public on all sorts of things related to traffic in terms of speed on any street, pedestrian and bicycle safety. Folks may be getting more cut through traffic in their neighborhood than it was designed for. And so we wanted to look at how we can address these in a very objective way rather than the one that seems to maybe fit in with a project that's already going. It might be a quick hitting item to say, what are the priorities based on a lot of the factors that we'll be running through. And so the overarching goal of this, like I said, is to provide an objective, a transparent, and equitable process for how we identify projects, evaluate, prioritize, and eventually implement different strategies based on public requests. And I'll just note that these aren't the requests that might come out of an engineering study that we're already doing that says we recommend X in this location. This is from public requests that are currently emailing or calling or whatever way they are currently issuing their request. So I'm going to be running through kind of the 8 primary steps that this guidance document takes you through. I know it was in your packet, but it's not necessarily a small document. So I'll be giving you the highlights for each step and kind of what that means for us, for the public, and how these requests work. So the first step, of course, is you have to make the request. So this will be an application, kind of a standard form. We have a current standard form online, but it doesn't ask for a lot of the things that we need for this. So we're updating a very easy to use kind of portal, click through, answer some questions, check some boxes, submit, and it will come into our DPW email address. You can also print it out, fill in a PDF and email it to us anyway to get it to us. So I already kind of mentioned why folks might be submitting this, but it is important to note that this isn't to request, say, this intersection I think should be a 4-way stop. Can you please put stop signs there? Or there are operational issues with this traffic signal. This is going to be more for a generalized concern of I'm seeing vehicles travel really fast on my neighborhood, or it's really hard to cross the street in this 500-foot stretch. So then we're going to go through a lot of kind of initial screening. There are going to be a lot of numbers on here, but they are actually quite simple. And I've already made a test spreadsheet to see how they play out, just to see is it straightforward for us to be able to handle also. So this first step, there's going to be 3 phases of scoring. This first one is our initial screening that takes into account really 2 primary metrics: the traffic conditions, or the number of vehicles on the road, and then a few safety concerns. So these numbers up here are based on reviews of kind of what's going on already for traffic and what other similar manuals and other municipalities are kind of using. And these are all being done on a per vehicle or per mile basis here to really normalize the playing field so that if someone is requesting something over a 500-foot stretch that only sees one crash versus someone who's submitting a request about a mile stretch that has 30 crashes, that the straight number doesn't really convey the different types of safety issues. And so throughout all of this, each request is going to be accumulating kind of points throughout this, and that's just based on all of these criteria we're going through. So if you are a local street but experiencing a pretty high volume, that would equate to more points because maybe that street wasn't designed for it. That might be a sign that you have a lot of cut-through traffic. Safety, pretty self-explanatory. And then on these, there are a few different areas where a request would get a higher prioritization score based on very key characteristics. Like even if there might be one crash per 0.2 miles, if it involved a bicycle or a pedestrian, that immediately gets additional prioritization here because that indicates a higher concern in looking out for those vulnerable users. So on here, there are maximum possible scores at all of these steps, and we've set thresholds of moving on to kind of the next phase. So in this case, the maximum possible score is 44, and the threshold to move to preliminary scoring is 30. So you really need to kind of check one of the boxes and you'll be able to get pretty close to that 30. If you're a local street with a lot of vehicles, that might indicate a problem, or even if it's not very high volume, but there are a lot of crashes, again, it would signify a problem.
But you fill out the numbers. It's not the person, they just identify the street area and the issues, and then you go through that.
Yeah, that's a great point. So there's definitely some additional staff work on the back of this that comes with implementing this process, but the metrics have been chosen that they're fairly easy to collect data at the beginning. A lot of this is publicly available data. VTrans and the Regional Planning Commission do yearly counts very frequently, and we get to submit what streets we'd like during the summer from the Regional Planning Commission. And any crash that happens that gets a police report goes to the state, and they maintain a database that we can search. That's all publicly available.
Public doesn't need to go to all these different databases.
Right. Yep, that is correct.
Stopper, huh?
They do not have to do that. It has taken me a number of years to navigate these. They're now very simple for me, but I won't be asking everyone to go through that.
That's why we have professional experts on
Yes,
staff.
so that's good to have the public understand as they look at this.
So the next step, the last one, all of those criteria were related to transportation specifically, since this is a really transportation-driven effort. But the next one, the next step going into preliminary scoring takes into account a bit more of the environment that it is in. So looking at bicycle and pedestrian facilities, what type of facility is available. Obviously, having a fully separated shared use path provides a much safer environment inherently for bicyclists and pedestrians, rather than not having a sidewalk at all or having kind of intermittent pieces. The request would become a higher priority if it doesn't have facilities and we're forcing all the users to share. And again, this is another place for prioritization if there's a mid-block crossing, so a crossing that's not signalized or at a stop intersection, that again increases the presence of those vulnerable users and therefore increases the risk. And then the next community criteria are what are called people generators. So places where more people are likely to be around. So things like a lot of retail facilities, maybe being near a mall or being near a library. High density areas, a large employer, or schools. And if one of those people generators is a school, that is another place for additional prioritization because, again, more vulnerable users, you're going to be seeing more kiddos. So adding the transportation scoring that we saw in the previous slide to this community area gives us the preliminary score. And the max score here of that transportation plus community is 72. And the threshold to move to community outreach, the next step, is 45. So you have to score at least 15 points in this to then continue through this. And if a request didn't meet either of those thresholds, either step 2 or step 3, there is a chance to be reevaluated in 3 years. To give it some time for maybe conditions to change so that the numbers would come out differently, but still have an opportunity to be looked at again. So that next step for any requests that are continuing through the process is an initial community outreach point. So these requests we would have, it would be as an agenda item on an existing bike ped committee meeting. I have talked to them about this and they are okay with that. This wouldn't be kind of a large scale traditional public meeting, but it would be warned as an agenda item on there, and it would be a shorter discussion really for the folks who put forth the request to come and elaborate on it, and the bike ped committee to kind of say like, yeah, we do think that is an important area to consider, or maybe some folks that don't agree with it might come and express that. So we can just get a clearer picture. And I'm already at all of those meetings as the staff liaison. So this is one place where there wouldn't be a big additional staff effort. So if it's gleaned that generally supportive from the neighbors and or the committee, then the next phase would happen. And this is where the staff effort starts to kind of increase.
So the committee could stop it dead in its tracks?
I wouldn't say that if they said, oh, we don't really think this is a good idea, that it would definitely stop. Especially if maybe it was really highly scored and we see that safety is a really huge concern based on the crash data and the neighbors.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can't say shut it down kind of deal, but it's kind of just a touch point for them to say, maybe this is the area we want to focus on and based on this.
Thank you.
So the next step after that community outreach is the technical evaluation. So we start to get a bit more in the weeds. This is where we would have to go out and collect speed data. A lot of times where we get the count data, sometimes if they did the road tubes, those also collect speed data. So sometimes it already exists in the past few years, or we might have to go out and get it. And so an example of what we'd look at, I have just kind of a sample of what speed data looks like over here. And based on what is counted from that data collection effort, you'd look at the 85th percentile speed, which is something I know we've brought up here, but that is the speed at which 85% of traffic is traveling at or below. And so that will be a big data point in that final scoring. And based on that community outreach and looking at the area in a bit more detail, we'll start to pull together some initial design recommendations, which might be as simple as totally ruling out a few that just don't make sense for the area, or some we think might be worth exploring more.
And what happens with the speed data if 85% are really traveling significantly higher than the posted traffic
Speed limit.
Speed limit.
That is a great question. So we use exactly that data. If we find on a 25-mile-an-hour road that folks, the 85th percentile speed is actually 36, and they're traveling 11 miles per hour over, that would then go into here. And so that 11 miles per hour over the speed limit, each mile per hour is 2 points, up to 28 points.
Okay.
So up to 14 miles per hour over, they will be counted. And then once you're over that 14, you get the full amount.
Good.
You crash.
So this is kind of the way that all three of those scoring processes add up. That initial was 44, just the transportation. Then we added the community with a maximum of 28, and then another maximum of 28 based on speed for a maximum total score of 100. So if a request has made it this far, it's probably worth talking about. So we're going to go back to the Bike Ped Committee, and this is going to be a bit more where we talk about the specifics. I might be there to present some of the ideas that we're starting to think about, that maybe this is a good area to improve sightlines. Maybe this is a good area to neck down an intersection, all sorts of things. And so that would be kind of the focus of discussion. Again, it wouldn't be the whole Bike Ped Committee, but it would be an agenda item and warned in the traditional way. So based on that conversation, we move into the final step, which is design and implementation, which is like kind of 2 steps, but 8A and B here. So it has to kind of break out into 2 options here. If it is a lower cost solution, something that staff can handle in-house, something that we have staff and budget capacity for that falls within an existing budget line item, we can add it to our list of ongoing projects internally to do. When it becomes a project that is out of current staff and budget scope, then that would have to come before you as a capital improvement project and talk through where the funding source for that would be. Is it from the general fund? Is it a bike ped improvement from Penny for Paths? Is it coming from somewhere? But that's the case that we'd usually have to bring in a consultant and go through a more traditional design and construction process for. So that's kind of the whole process. To just wrap this up before opening it up for any of your questions, in the appendix of the document that you all have is a lot of different sample design treatments. It is not a fully exhaustive list, but it is pretty close. Obviously, new things come out all the time, but I want to just throw some examples up here to kind of give you an idea of the scale of projects that would come out of this, so that it's not going to be something where you look at the entirety of a road and assess it from A to Z. This is going to be a bit more targeted approach, something like a block of road that a speed hump would really help through here, necking down an intersection, adding some pavement markings to make bicyclists more visible, things like that. The median island one? Spear and Pheasant.
Yeah.
That's Pheasant. That's Pheasant Way entering onto Spear Street. If you want to guess where the speed humps are, I would be impressed.
No, it's going down Pheasant Way.
Yeah, but
It's coming out of Pheasant onto Spear.
Yeah, you're driving on Spear, so it doesn't look like that.
The pavement markings are not local. I was out on a not great day. But the speed humps, if you could guess that street, I would be very impressed.
Is that Proctor?
It's on Curie Lane.
Curie Lane.
I spent a day driving around in there. There were some good examples.
Last time I've driven on Curie, I can't remember.
So some next steps of kind of what does this actually mean? How does this go into effect? We have obviously been receiving requests for a long while now, and those that haven't been addressed in their entirety will go through this actual scoring and prioritization process. And the ones that meet the priority thresholds, we're going to jump into that community outreach. Like I said, when I met with the Bike Ped Committee last week, they were on board for this because that's really at the heart of their goals, is to keep folks safe on the streets. And so many of these are neighborhood streets around bikes and pedestrians that they were very on board for this. And I also wanted to mention that these requests, it's not going to be like we fill in the spreadsheet as soon as one comes in. Our plan is to kind of batch them quarterly, let the requests come in so that we're not necessarily overburdened with data collection, or every month that a Bike Ped Committee is set aside for something like this. So batching them quarterly makes sense. Also for data collection efforts, we can kind of do a round of data collection over the course of a couple months, go to a lot of streets rather than just all these one-offs. And then the projects that are going through the request process, or through the requests that are going through the prioritization process, process, excuse me. We'll be back in October and October through January to talk about those projects that seem that kind of rise to the top to move forward as future capital projects. And
The
so I will.
state roads, this can apply to them, correct?
Correct.
So that's 7 and 116 and 2, right?
Correct. But this would be our ranking prioritization, so we'd still reach out and work with them for any implementation we'd like to do.
Right. They could still go through this process, but we wouldn't be able to immediately, even if it was one in staff capacity. We couldn't immediately do it.
Great. Any questions? Tyler, do you have any? I can't see you, so if you...
I do. Thank you. And Eric, thank you for all your hard work. This is a remarkably comprehensive document. I guess question for Erica and also for the balance of the councils. In this order, am I correct in that to pass phase 1, it would the only way that it could pass phase 1 would be to meet this criteria? The initial screening, right? So we're looking at, I guess what I said differently. Did you discuss, was it ever discussed that, I think the quantitative data is important, but I guess my, not concern, but my question lies around, seems to be somewhat, reactive rather than proactive, right? So we're waiting for an accident perhaps to occur or for a multitude of crashes to occur as opposed to, and it wouldn't be able to proceed past this until something like that happened. Did you explore any measures that would allow for us to move to past step 2 that were more holistic in nature or qualitative in nature, maybe by collecting X number of signatures, or if there were, or maybe it wouldn't even need to be qualitative. Maybe it could still be quantitative, and that if there were X number of school children who happen to live next to the area. I'd love the council's thoughts on whether or not. I don't have a whole lot of experience in this, but it seems to me to be almost a little, and I don't mean this in a critical way, so please forgive me. The words escape me, but I'm wondering if there might be a possible way to make it more proactive as opposed to reactive, and I'd love people's thoughts.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. When you brought up signatures, we did actually discuss that during the community outreach or in the submission of these things. But what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong here, is instead of kind of breaking out this initial scoring and preliminary scoring, to kind of look at them at once, to take into account some of that land use consideration, like you were saying, if there are school children nearby, there are that is taken into account, and being able to look at that from transportation and land use kind of jointly. Am I rephrasing that correctly?
Yeah, I'll allow you to be more prescriptive with it, but yes, I think in essence we're saying the same thing. I would hate to see a proposed project not make it past step 2 because we haven't had an accident yet. And then we do have an accident, and that's the catalyst that puts it over a threshold. Does that make sense? So I don't know, from a prescriptive standpoint, I am not the person to say how we could account for that earlier in the process. If it would be taking some of these elements out of step 3 and putting them there, but that might seem to be a great solution for it. But I think you understand where I'm coming from, and that I would hate to see a group of concerned citizens get together, bring something forward, and us not being able to do anything because it hasn't happened yet.
Understood.
But all the are there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I very much hear that. And another way that we have tried to take that into account, this hasn't been officially published and started use. So that is why we're here, to hear your feedback on this for exactly things like that. This is another reason why we wanted to make sure that things could go through the process again, so that not necessarily to wait for that crash or something like that, but in the way of a new building pops up. So now there are more people there, so we want to make sure that gets taken into account. But I very much hear you in terms of looking at the kind of environmental factors, not just the traffic numbers initially.
Other questions from the council? None? Okay, John Kalaki, did you want to comment or have a question? You're muted for us. I can see your mouth moving, but.
Thank you. No, I'm listening, but I'm here for later on in the agenda.
Oh,
So thank
okay.
you for asking.
All right. Well, if there's no other comments
But
or
I would just
questions.
say that, I mean, you probably get a lot of feedback from the public about traffic issues on streets and stuff, and you have to pour it into some sort of a sieve, right, to figure out how you're going to, which ones you're going to react to, right? And this gives you a structured way to do that. That seems pretty fair to try and evaluate the issues that are more important than others, right? And then take it to the public a couple times and finally, and then prioritize what your work plan is going to be and whether it needs to go to current budget or to the CIP. So, I mean, so if somebody calls and they go, well, we have a way to evaluate this, and everybody goes through this process. So if you'll be patient and go through this process with us, right, we'll find out just how important it really is relative to other things, so that because we have priorities in the city, right? So I understand that.
I do too. But to Tyler's point, without a crash, you don't pass that 30-point threshold in that first category. So, I can see how if, the school, in addition to the number of cars going on that street, could somehow get you past the threshold. I know that we're already doing that, so it's kind of a hypothetical now that we're already doing that. But
Yeah, I do absolutely hear that, and we can definitely explore some more here. Israel and his team did a lot of reviewing of existing manuals and guidance documents that other municipalities are using all over the country. But one thing to note, not to say that we're absolutely tied to this order. A lot of these things are really interconnected, where if you have one of those people generators nearby, that will inherently increase your number of vehicles in that area. And then when you have more vehicles, the risk goes up just by the nature of the math there. But I do absolutely hear you. In that it could end up being reactive in ways. So, yeah, we're very much appreciate that feedback.
Thank
It's
you.
not set in stone. The criteria can be fluid. If they find out through experience that nothing is rising to the level where it gets any attention, you may have to recalibrate, right?
Councilor Barrett, your first comment was absolutely right. And also that we can adjust this as we move forward. But right now, I feel a strong need to have a way to, those calls I get where people are speeding in my neighborhood, I want speed bumps.
Right.
Figure out a way to weigh those against each other. Because right now, my response is, okay, thank you for calling. I'm going to put you on the list. As funding becomes available, we'll get to you. But I'd like to have a more transparent way to do that. And as Erica alluded to, I'd like to have a way to come to council to say, I have this backlog of projects that we could do for traffic safety, pedestrian bike safety, whatever it may be. And we could talk about that during budget season as we move forward.
I think that is very thoughtful and makes sense. And I realize it's not perfect, but once it's implemented, just like the LDRs, you can make changes to ratify some unintended consequence. Yes.
Can I make some wrap-up comments?
Agreed.
So
You certainly may.
sorry, Tyler,
No, I agree. I think it's it's an incredible first step. And I apologize if I came across as overly critical. That was my only feedback, but otherwise it's to go from not having a policy or a procedure to this is very impressive. Great work.
So just one last point on the crash data. I think it's important to note that when we all hear crash data, we think of big fire rate crashes, and the reality is most crashes are bumper to bumper fender benders. Not that those are insignificant at all, and we want to encourage them, but I think that we will see some of these requests from the community having that kind of crash data that we may not think exist out there right now. Whenever there is a crash whenever there is a significant crash in the city, the police and the state police reconstruction unit do a evaluation of was there causality with the infrastructure we have in place, and that is treated very differently than this resident process. So I just want to be clear that we are very attentive to health and safety on our streets in the event of an accident. And then finally, just to wrap up, if I may, Madam Chair, I want to embarrass Tom for a minute, and Erica and Israel have done an enormous amount of work on this. Tom, I think, as a lot of you know, has had most of his career in our public works department. In my experience, when you have a leader like that who comes up within a department and then takes on a leadership role, it is sometimes hard for them to see the improvements that need to be made and see how we could do things better. I've never seen a professional like Tom who can hit the ground running and really identify where those areas of modernization and process improvement are needed. And I give him a ton of credit for getting us to where we are now and leading Erica and the team through this effort. So just wanted to acknowledge that. This is a huge improvement. This is completely arbitrary right now, how we are handling these requests, and not transparent to our community. So to put in a system that is equitable and transparent is a massive improvement for our 20,000 residents. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on then. If there's no other comments or questions, to item 10, which is receiving an update on the city center development, the tax increment financing district, and the form-based code. Alana Blanchard, our community development director, and Paul Connor, our planning and zoning director, are going to give this to us. Thank you.
Hey, folks.
So
welcome.
I don't see either of you on yet. So just to table set while Alana comes on, we were very thankful to have a very successful last TIF bond vote on town meeting day. I appreciate that the community thinks we are going in the right direction. We then you all had some conversations about what's going on in the TIF district and clarity about what's coming next. So we wanted to provide kind of a universal update, comprehensive update on where we stand, not only with the TIF district, but city center globally and the form-based code district, to be responsive to those conversations happening out in the community.
How did the audit go?
It's going.
It's still going?
It's still going.
Okay, thank you.
$80,000 later. We think we are scheduling our exit interview with them in May, which is kind of the final step, which is a great sign.
Can the angle of these TVs be changed at all? Mm-hmm. Can they be tipped up? Is it pretty easy?
Yeah, go tip it. See what happens.
Yeah, don't make it fall.
So,
you can start while he crashes this TV.
I get 4 points for AV help.
Right. No points for a crash.
So thank you for having us tonight. You know, I think we're at a really, really exciting point in the city center TIF district. We're sort of teenagers at the moment, and as you can see from the picture in front of you, there's a lot happening. the city is definitely growing and we're a bit awkward right now. But there's a lot of change happening and a lot of change planned. So we wanted to share some of that with you today and just give a general overview of what has happened until now in terms of what's been developed, what's been approved, what the city's working on, or has approved, and what the private sector has. So, and Paul and I are going to jointly do this, which also maybe somewhat like a teenager, a little awkward because we're like, oh, we both have things to say on that side. So here we go. If the slide will advance, let's see.
Yours tilted too? Do you have a glare coming out?
No, I don't have a glare. Do you
There
see
you
a
go.
glare, Helen?
So,
Because I'm shorter.
No.
Right.
So we wanted to start with the geography of the TIF district. The city center is often thought of as just Market Street, and it's really much wider and more has a much more exciting geography than that. It's both developed areas and undeveloped areas, and the TIF district itself extends all the way down San Remo and all the way to Heinsberg Road and all the way to Williston Road. And many of the projects are actually outside of the TIF district because they serve the TIF district, meeting the state standard. But overall, city center is much larger, and the TIF district makes up about a third of the area. There we go. So the form-based code encompasses the area that we think of as city center, and I think Paul would like to speak.
Yeah, so just to, this was the purple area is the area that was adopted in 2016 as your form-based code, and that was really the areas that one would generally consider to be the commercial mixed-use part of of the city. So its boundaries are the residential neighborhoods, and obviously this UVM and City of Burlington. And really, what's fascinating and what we're seeing starting to happen is a combination of redevelopment of existing areas and also new development along Market Street. And it's really the combination of those that we're going to see in a few slides as to how this is coming together, and then some steps to the future about where this is going to go.
So in addition to the residential development that has already occurred and that is occurring, and the commercial development that occurs and is occurring, there are also several significant natural areas and existing green spaces that the city uses today, as well as City Center Park, which the city's developed. And right now, City Center Park includes both the 7.65 acres that was built as City Center Park and has opened to the public, and the stormwater pond, which is right off of Market Street and serves Market Street, but also is a recreational area. It has public art and grassy areas, walking trails, and extensive gardens. And that park area will connect to City Center Park and also to Garden Street. And so together, combined with the recreational path, it becomes really accessible to the development that's immediately happening in City Center TIF district. So, but it also helps to sort of serve the folks, but there are many other parcels within this area. So there's parcels that are owned by the school district. There is a very large forest that's owned by UVM that has walking trails in it. And then there are several other pieces that are preserved surrounding wetlands that the city controls. So, and I want to pause here and give Paul a chance to talk about what might happen in the future based on our existing land development regulations.
Sure. So you're going to see in there that there are 5 or 6 sort of green circles in there, and they're described as when redeveloped. So one of the pieces that exists in the form-based code is a civic amenity, site amenity component. So when there's a major redevelopment of a property, there's a certain portion of it that needs to become an amenity for that site. I think, as Alana and I were putting this together, we see that those circles are both an opportunity, that they're both a requirement to a certain extent, from the private sector development, but they're also opportunities as we think about in the future public-private partnerships of the possibility of value add. And let's say in a few years' time, there's major work at the Blue Mall or the U Mall site or the Staples Plaza. There are strategic opportunities for the city to consider being an investment partner in a place like that to add more localized park space if we wanted to make that public and private, for example. And then just the other, to underscore something that Alana had been describing, connectivity amongst all of this is a really key element in City Center. I had a resident come in just last week who moved 2 years ago from the Midwest to the Pines. She sold her car, and she said that she's really excited that she lives here because her 5-year-old granddaughter, whenever she comes to stay with her, they go for a walk, and she had come in specifically curious about, is the stormwater pond that has the gooses in it going to be connecting to the city center park. The 5-year-old granddaughter calls it the tiny forest is her name for City Center Park, and was so excited to know that these two things were being connected about this is exactly what she wanted to be, where she wanted to be living in her retirement, to be able to walk around with her granddaughter. And then we were talking about the blue ones at the bottom, and I was telling her about the other opportunities that exist to walk over there, and she said, "Oh, I didn't even know about these yet." So connections, and then the messaging of how much is there and how much was coming in the future is a really neat opportunity.
Paul, can I ask you, you used the term, and now I can't remember exactly the words, as a investment partner, the city in these little circles. Would the investment dollars come from like the open space fund? Because we're talking more about public
I think that's that's a future discussion to be had from the council. It is an eligible use of the open space fund. It can be used to acquire natural areas and recreation land. So it is absolutely an eligible use of the funds.
Because many of these are outside the TIF. So, and we've already did our final bonding for the TIF, right? So that.
Right. It could also be in an update to the
Okay.
city's impact fees. They could be impact fee eligible type projects. That there's a number of possibilities that could be in there.
Right.
It may be even something where it's not an acquisition, but it's a management and who maintains something over time. There's a lot of opportunities. We're ongoing in discussions with folks about.
So. That was a great lead in into transportation. So there's several new streets that have been built over the years by the private sector, such as in Quarry Hill and Garden Street, which is under construction currently. And then many years ago, the city made a big investment in Dorset Street and made it into the street that it is today, gave it the recreation pass, as well as trees. And nicer lighting and undergrounded utilities was a major investment. And then currently with the TIF district, we're connecting Dorset and Williston Road with Garden Street and Market Street, which already happened. But also designing those streets so that they're very accessible, so that you can use them with a wheelchair or strollers, and that they're bikeable. And then thinking about recreation paths that give people ways through the park to these streets. So a big investment, and in order to support the development that has been happening, but that we see coming in the future.
And all I'll say about this one is that this sort of connects from the larger scale and proactive side, essentially right back to the last conversation that you had with Erica and Tom about investing in our infrastructure to support people on foot, on bicycle, in wheelchairs, in transit, and which aligns directly to the objective in the climate action plan of reducing vehicle miles traveled in our community. So it's all directly linked together.
Well, just the colors on that map is the green and the red and the kind of, which are the bike and I just can't tell from the colors what's like bike ped and what's road and what's
The fluorescent green is is bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. The slightly darker green is bicycle and pedestrian adjacent to roads, right? So like on Quarry Hill Road.
like a sidewalk.
Yeah, all of these have bicycle and pedestrian facilities, whether it's on a shared use path
So
or
the
a shared
green, the
use.
dark green, and the red is all bike ped.
Each one of those facilities that's highlighted allows both pedestrians and bicycles. Some of the streets, like Garden Street, it's a sidewalk next to a cycle track. But these all are infrastructure that support bicycles and pedestrians.
Okay, thanks.
And
Just the skinny green lines are just bike ped access through the parks or the bridge.
great question. So this is, all of this transportation, the natural infrastructure, it supports people coming to live and shopping and owning businesses. This shows all the buildings that were built under the form-based code, and we thought it was important to really highlight that tool, which was developed as the TIF district was getting approved and really helped to galvanize development. And I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so we're going to go through the next couple slides of both buildings under the form-based code and before. The big picture message here is there's a lot happening in the core of city center. So what you see on this map is 19 new buildings that have been built under our form-based code or are currently under construction, or I think actually 19 built or under construction, another 3 that are approved to be built. A big chunk of them, of course, are right on Market Street, as anybody who's been going up and down can see, but they're not all there. There's 2 that have been constructed on Quarry Hill Road under the form-based code, just south of the U-Mall, 2 previously sort of built as single-family homes but operating as dermatologist buildings were rebuilt into 6 apartments and a new dermatology building. Habitat for Humanity on Heinsberg Road took a former single-family home and made it into 4 new homes. And then, as you can see, anytime you get to the top of Dorset Street, there's massive, large reconstruction there taking place of a mixed-use building. That is one of 2 buildings, new buildings approved on the site. The other one has not yet started construction, but it'd be right up against the street. Can you go to the next slide here? So the next side, if we add in buildings constructed or substantially rebuilt in the 8 years before that, we also get Trader Joe's, what is now EMS, the building that has Chipotle in that, the hotel that replaced the University Inn, the CVS that replaced the old Friendlies, Healthy Living, which had been, for anybody who's been around a long time, an old Lake Buick dealership, and they brought the building all the way up to the street, which was really the first massive investment in city center. So there's been a lot happening in this area.
So the vision that was established by the community really focused on supporting this development, but really supporting a downtown. And so all of the city's investments to date have really emphasized transportation, placemaking, and creating a place for community to come together and create stronger connections. And so generally, all of these projects do double or triple duty. And we're starting to see how that works as they're getting built one by one. And that will continue happening over the next few years. And I'm going to move on. So we spend a lot of time talking about our TIF projects. But there are lots of other projects that are underway that are supporting these investments in city center. There's the Dorset Street signals, which are addressing creating additional capacity along Dorset Street, but especially at the Dorset-Williston Road intersection. And this summer, The signals are being installed. The software that will actually make them smart is coming at a later date. But we've been talking about this for a long time, so it's great to see it moving forward. One of the first projects that occurred to support City Center was the Potash Brook Watershed Pond and Box Culvert, which is that little bridge that you see on Market Street right by the stormwater pond. But if you saw it under construction, it goes about 20 feet
It's
down.
pretty big.
And most of it's underground, but it supports the aquatic natural life between upstream and downstream, and the pond addresses stormwater across Mayfair Park. So really big investments. Allard Square House. Oh, I'm on the wrong slide here. Nope. Okay. Oh, Allard Square Housing and Garden Street Apartments. I was thinking we somehow ended up on the next slide, but the City Affordable Housing Trust Fund invested in both of those projects. And then the city's been supporting bike share in our last iteration and I believe in our future iteration. And then most recently Illuminate Vermont, and currently the traffic study that is about to be undertaken by CCRPC that will look at City Center and help develop trigger points for when investments need to be made and to understand how to fund those using a variety of tools that support transportation planning.
So just some summary numbers through right now what's been approved in the TIF district, over 500 homes, and outside the TIF district, over 200 homes, 150 affordable homes within that. And the piece we're really excited about is now the construction has begun on the first floor commercial component of it. We knew from the beginning of this work that we had somewhat of a unique circumstance with, especially around Market Street, where there was housing in single-family homes and small multiplexes outside of City Center. We knew that in the core of City Center that it was almost entirely commercial with almost no housing. And so when City Center, the form-based code, all the investments in Market Street started coming around, we were not surprised to see that a big chunk of the initial investment was going to be in the housing side. The form-based code laid out where it's optional to have housing versus commercial and where it is required to have first-story commercial. And we've seen, for the most part, but not entirely, in the areas that it's optional to have mostly residential. Though I will say that under construction now, 112 Garden Street, right behind Healthy Living, is going to have a cafe and also a daycare in it. So that's a non-residential component. And I think as we see more on Williston Road, we're going to see much more of a mix, like the hotel that's under construction, or that is approved to be under construction, and the first floor of the one that is under construction. Now we're entering the next phase. This big site immediately next to us is the first major block that's in the T5 district, and that requires first-story commercial. So that's 23,000 of that 29,000 is first-story commercial on the two buildings facing directly on Market Street, with housing above it. And can you just jump to the next slide? So the next slide is what we've seen so far this year. So in the last month, we've received application for the other side of the street, so the south side of Market Street, for that block that is essentially the staging area right now. Mm-hmm. That is proposed to include 213 additional homes and 27,000 square feet of first-story commercial, again, sort of mirroring the other side. Those numbers of 23 and 27,000 square feet of commercial, they're also significant in that they're not single large foot plates. The form-based code was very intentional in setting up the ability for much smaller spaces to exist, which is something that, frankly, outside of the Blue Mall and a couple of small buildings, doesn't really exist in South Burlington, the ability to have smaller, more downtown-feeling commercials. So those are very large numbers for that size of retail and commercial and
and small office space, and we're really excited for this next stage of where this is going to go.
So they'll have the alleyways, or that's the wrong term, right? Is that what you're saying? They're separate?
No, it's more that the doorway standards for in the form-based code require there be a door no more than every 35 feet. And so what that does is it creates the ability for different tenants to have different needs over time. So really, we're thinking about buildings to be used for the next century. So, there may be a user that wants to be a restaurant today that will take up 10,000 of that, but then maybe 20 years from now, it'll be 5 small retailers, and the building has been designed or are being designed to be able to accommodate both of those circumstances. That's what I mean by smaller scale.
Is there another question?
You just understand the numbers. So, Paul, I guess you mentioned Catamount will have about 23,000 of commercials?
On the site that's under construction now is about 23,000 of first-story non-residential and 161 units, housing units.
And this 27 is an addition, so it's a total of 50?
Yes.
Okay, so how does that relate to the 29 on the slide?
Sure, so go back one slide. So the 29 represents everything that has already been approved. So the 29 is the 23 plus the daycare plus the coffee shop, and then the 58 that is the larger one also includes the first story of the includes the hotel that's been approved. It includes the dermatologist that's been built.
But it doesn't include the new 27 that you're...
Correct. That's why we put the word approved in here. The next slide is literally just been submitted, so it's not yet approved. It's just
our deck is a little different.
We did update that to include that additional that's not in there.
And I would point out that the 58,000 square feet that's outside of the TIF district, that's net of the area that was demolished to make way for the new mixed-use housing commercial that's going in next to where the Holiday Inn was.
But I mean, it's interesting. So we anticipate roughly 60,000 of commercial space in the city center TIF, and that's to
be approved by and under construction this year.
60 outside, but I mean within like the proper city center, 60,000 square feet of commercial spaces. That's really exciting.
It is.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, can I ask a quick question about the housing? Do you have an idea of the total by 2026? We were looking at this slide of those 855 homes. Do you have what percentage of those are going to allow for ownership, or are those all commercially run, or are those all rentals?
Sure, that's a great question. The Habitat for Humanity ones, which is 4 of them, are those are ownership units. There's a relationship of how those get turned over, that there's a shared equity associated with it. Most of the rest of the multifamily have been designed currently as being rental, and that is really reflective of the market broadly. Has multifamily over the last decade is in South Burlington and beyond has been almost entirely rental. Prior to that, it was almost entirely the other way. We're starting to see that turn a little bit, of including, not necessarily in city center, but a few inquiries that we've been getting of folks who are interested in turning over current buildings that are currently rental to becoming ownership. So it's really it's the market kind of sort of shifts those things back and forth a little bit, but right now the overwhelming majority of it, almost all of it, is designed as rental.
Understood. And so you said 4 units or 4 projects?
For the Habitat for Humanity project, which is one project, 4 units, is rental, I believe. Sorry, is ownership. I believe all the rest of it is rental at the moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else you guys want to share?
So we're at the end of our presentation, so happy to answer questions.
Okay, are there any more questions? Andrew?
Yeah, so I guess I think when we asked for this, one of the things I was interested in was talking about the initial proposal, which contemplated like a central kind of lawn space, a central green space, and I see on the slide that has the opportunities in the future for where there could be green space with it's kind of not a central like it's not like you see it's not what I had in mind, I guess. And I guess if I can wave a magic wand, right? I know that this is all really difficult, but if I can wave a magic wand, wouldn't it be terrific to say take the parking lot that's in front of City Hall, across from City Hall, convert that to green space, and then put like a deck behind City Hall for more parking with covered solar canopy? Like really have a vision for the city which reduces the impervious surface, creates this central lawn area that's kind of right in the middle of all the action. And so I would love to talk about that. I don't know if other counselors think that vision is something that we should talk about, but to me, that's like a very appealing vision if we could achieve that.
Yeah, I support that. I think the challenge, and our staff can clarify, was actually having that parcel become available to us to purchase.
Yeah, but maybe with the right incentive, it can become available. We could maybe offer to have the parking that's there. They could access a deck that we build, right? So they still have.
You mean a parking deck? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, parking deck. Yeah, to kind of instead of having just one layer of impervious surface with cars, like to utilize the existing lots better and convert some of the impervious surface to non-impervious surface.
The magic wand, I
The
think,
magic wand.
is appropriate, because I think Alana wished she could have had a magic wand for a lot of things. And
yeah,
but if that opportunity becomes available, yes, I would support that.
But does it make sense to at least approach the folks that own the lot? And
I think they've been approached,
Yeah.
but we can certainly approach again.
This property cost $500,000, if I remember correctly, right?
The one we're sitting in?
Yeah.
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 Or was it 800,000?
I thought it was $500,000, but
it's not a
Do you
lot
remember
of
what
money
this
for
was?
for
It
Central
800?
Park.
I think it was much closer to your, yes. So it was, I think we paid less than other people might have paid for it, and so we were charged 1.1 per acre.
It's not
Yeah.
a crazy amount of money for that kind of amenity, which would really, I think,
Last for forever.
transform the city center. I mean, I would imagine, honestly, spending a fair bit more than that.
Well, it certainly was part of the conversation as we were envisioning this. That first flyover had a park, but it also had a like a hockey arena or something too. I mean, there was a whole lot of if wishes were horses, then beggars would ride, But it doesn't mean that it's out of the possibility, I think, if that's how we wanted to commit open space funds. I think the other reality is we need to make sure that we can generate the property taxes to support paying off the TIF bonds.
Yeah, but if you kind of improve the area and the quality of life and you make that area more attractive, you'll get higher quality, tenants that will.
What are the public lands adjacent to Central School, the blue area? Is that city-owned land or school-owned land?
I'm sorry, which one?
The one near Central School.
That's Price Chopper.
No, those are the playing fields in the woods that belong to the school.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, Oh, so it's the
Oh, yeah.
it's the green area associated with a school that's not parking lot or school.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. And then just north of there is JC Park.
Is what?
JC Park is
Right.
north
Yeah.
of there.
I get that.
And in no way intended to dissuade the part of the conversation, but in addition to whatever new facilities the city is thinking about, medium term to longer term, there's opportunities to work collaboratively with the school district to think about how does that space get optimal use in support of a downtown on the weekends when it's not being used by the schools. So there's opportunities to think creatively for bringing that component into city center as well, and have it reflect the intent and use of the school district as well as the needs of the community around it. So
I think there's also opportunities to talk with the owners of the U Mall about their vision for the redevelopment of that site and the green kind of a potential green belt that links the development that they could be proposing and Dorset Street. I guess, can I interject on
Sure.
Angie's comment? So certainly it is the council's prerogative to redirect our priorities. And if you all want to take a vote to do that, we can. I would just say that right now we are a little frantically trying to get the 4 TIF bond votes done, or the 4 TIF projects in the bond vote done. And while I agree it's not a huge amount of money for land acquisition, I think if we were going to go through a real visioning process for, a great lawn on the Poon lot and property acquisition and a parking deck that would, I think, need to be in partnership with the school. I don't think we have enough property behind this building to build a parking deck. We are now starting to talk about, a geo bond of a pretty significant amount, which again is council's priority to redirect us. But I guess I would be looking for some direction of, do you want us to do this after we get through these 4? Do you want us to stop doing one of these 4 to focus on this?
What's a geo bond? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, a general obligation bond, which is not a TIF bond. It's just on the property.
You're the second person to use that
geothermal.
acronym. With
Sorry.
it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
General obligation. It just means that, a bond that's paid for by the property tax,
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
which technically all our bonds are. But
I think Burlington's, one of the was it Howard Dean who set aside the city park there, the waterfront park. Yeah. Chicago has Grant Park, Central Park in New York City. I mean, there are a lot of examples that show how prime real estate is actually a huge enhancement when left as green space.
Direct us what you'd like to do.
Okay. Other comments?
I just, my own personal bias is that in terms of city center and the wish for more open space in the center of it, I think that ship has sailed. That's my bias right now. And I think we should put our interest in the 4 projects that are in front of planning and zoning first. And we have a little park. We have the land that's next to the school, although that's occupied often. And there's other redevelopments that are going to happen, especially at U Mall and the Blue Mall. We just have to make sure that when those happen, there are requirements on them that they allocate some percentage of it to be returned back to non-impervious surface, and it becomes some kind of a green space. So, just sorry to disagree with you, but I think that that we should have made that allocation 10 years ago.
Maybe it's
I
not
agree
too
with
late
him.
now. It's not. Those spaces are not essential green space. I think Megan's right. There's so many benefits that are hard to, so many intangibles to having that central green space.
Yeah. I've heard that request too from people. I've heard concerns too that I'm glad you have the commercial, that we're not getting that first floor commercial that a lot of people were hoping for, or said that they were told to expect. And I think too that there's I brought up just some residents' concerns about how there's not a lot of variety in the building and the architecture. and as Helen said, well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, as you know. And so I'm not here to dictate what beautiful is, but I think variety is something that was recommended in the rules, and I don't know how strong that recommendation is and what impetus is behind any kind of levers that people hold to recommend a little bit more variety in the architectural styles.
Well, I don't know. You do look at the 3 pictures that are up, or the 4. There is some variety. I think it's always challenging when it's 4 or 5 stories to look at the architecture as really different. I mean, you know, you look at housing developments and they're all the same too. You know, you get tan, gray, or white siding.
You don't have to. I mean,
No,
you
you
certainly don't have
but,
to.
But some of this is privately developed, so it's. And I agree with you. I think the vision originally was to maybe if you look at the one on the left, they are pretty similar except for the color of the siding, you know, versus making it different looking. I don't know, we were just in Florida and a lot of the development there is only 2 stories and they make it look very different, sort of. I think it's harder when it's 4 or 5 stories. You know, I mean, wouldn't it be lovely to have a Chrysler building and, you know, all these different, you know,
It's interesting what
I
makes this not
think it's
attractive.
also building materials. And
There's no balconies.
I'm sorry?
There's no balconies.
Yeah, I think it's building materials more than, and I know that we don't, you know, really say what materials to use. We say what materials not to use in our regulations. But variety is there as a recommendation. And so I just don't know what that, how can we pull that lever?
Well, isn't it true that the form-based codes sort of got rid of review, any kind of aesthetic review by the DRB?
It replaced a very detailed DRB review with certain standards in terms of amount and spacing of amount of windows, the setback of windows, that there have to be variety, 3 breaks in the building every 80 feet, either vertically or horizontally or by material. And, you know, some of the challenge is that architecture, I'm not an architect, but architecture tends to go through eras, and we're seeing a lot of city center built in a single era. So, you know, when we look back in history, you can say, oh, that's a Victorian building because Victorian buildings have a style to them. And there's a, you know, post-war building. We're in an era where materials like hardy plank and brick are 2 pretty common materials. They're very sturdy and they meet energy codes. And, you know, there's some design elements to it that, that's one element. And then I think the second one is that while, to the point of being 4-story buildings, there are a reasonably high number of boxes that sort of constrain a project in terms of it has to meet all the fire safety codes, it has to meet ADA, it has to meet the energy code and the stretch energy code, and then we say a minimum amount of windows and things like that. And the things that create variety on top of that are things that are, you know, creating, you know, a larger vertical element. And those are interesting, but also really expensive because you have to have the elevator go up to a top story. We're seeing some people starting to experiment with it, though. The thing that's not really shown in that picture on the left is that in the most recent phase of that, the developer has made a small rooftop thing that you can see from Williston Road, where residents can go and get views of the Green Mountains, and that was the way that they decided to create their open space. Was wow, we've got these spectacular views. Let's create a little rooftop area, which doesn't really necessarily show up here, but it is beginning to create variety for residents.
Where is that? I'm sorry.
It's on top of the building on the left, or maybe it's the second building, the one that's not. It's immediately next to it.
Oh, it's the
Oh,
Holiday
this is
Inn
what
one.
it's going to look like.
No, sorry.
So,
The left is Quarry Hill Road.
okay, that is Quarry Hill Road. So what
Yeah.
can we see from Williston Road?
You can see if you are on Williston Road, you can see that one of the two buildings that's been built on Quarry Hill Road has a top story, small projection on top of it, and that's for residents to enjoy an open space looking out at the Green Mountains on top of the building as opposed to on the ground floor.
Do they let the neighbors behind them go up to see it? Whose view they wrecked?
Well, the Olympiad building has a common room that's on the 5th floor, right? That
Yep.
overlooks towards the west.
Yeah.
As does Larkin Terrace over on Shelburne Road has one.
I mean, I think we really do need to think about. I mean, I agree with you. I think the vision that a lot of people had was that we would sort of recreate the Vermont small town center with a green, and the buildings would all be kind of different. But all of those towns that are like that, the buildings were built, as Paul suggests, at different periods of time. So they do look really different. I mean, you go down Church Street, and yeah, the buildings are all about 3 stories, most of them. Until recently, I don't think they could even have housing on the 2nd and 3rd floor because they had to build an elevator because of ADA compliance. So they were empty for a very, very long time.
Well, Winooski was fairly recent, and people brought Winooski up as an example of
how different things are,
of how it could look.
Well, you've got a lot of the same thing in Winooski. It looks just like this.
I would agree. I think you have the same stuff in Winooski.
In their downtown, not the new brick buildings and the cascades and no. They're thinking about it. I mean, you see this along Route 15, but
well,
so if you walk down Winooski Falls Way, you have Cascade, which is a brick building, like you have Allard Square, and then the 2 Redstone buildings are very much like Quarry Hill, and then you have the affordable housing that's behind us. If you're walking down Winooski Falls Way on the left, again, it's the same kind of siding as that rainbow building, and then you have CCV, which is a brick building, but is publicly funded, and then City Lights, which is on the corner across from CCV, which is I think very close to what the garden. What's the garden street across from CHG?
Union Place.
Union Place.
I find it to be very different, personally. But
well, I look at these
side by
pictures
side,
and I
but-
think they're different. I just think we're stuck with building or creating a downtown from scratch at a period of time when the requirements or the affordable, I guess, sidings and elements are, somewhat limited. We don't have the chance to have a city hall like like Burlington that was built I don't know how long ago, and then all the different other buildings and the big church at the end. We have a different kind of downtown. Not that I would love to have a green, but I also think there's and it could be a possibility, but I don't think this looks like, our downtown looks like Williston's housing arrangement. So, but that's just my feeling. We go through periods of architecture, which not everyone likes.
Well, I I mean, I'm certainly not here to dictate anybody's taste. I'm just here to relay people's disappointment, and they've invested a lot. I'm not saying that I have any kind of notion of how wide this opinion is, but I also want to ask if the broad sentiment on the council is not to pursue a green at this time. Are we precluding future exploration of that? I have heard just concern that it's really going to be feeling closed into, and I think to have people live downtown in our city center, that yes, we have the gooses, yes, we have City Center Park, but there's a real benefit that comes with that open space. I just wonder if that door is truly shut.
One more point on the green. I guess like a lot of people I spoke to didn't realize that it wasn't part of the plan. I guess it was a decision made in a couple of years ago during COVID. Which I think took people by surprise, honestly, that the green wasn't any longer part of the plan.
Well, yeah, we had to make decisions.
Yeah.
And that fell by the wayside.
So
for the
I
time
don't
being.
know
But
the right time, but
so
I believe
Jesse,
that there's
when we say we decide tonight, does deciding mean if we say we're going ahead as planned, there's no green? I mean, is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. I didn't mean to suggest that this was a decision-making night. I meant to suggest more that you all always have the prerogative to put your hands up and redirect us on any given night. What I was suggesting more is if we are going to truly reprioritize, stop working on one project to work on another project, personally, I think that should be part of a policies and strategies process. Is this something we really want to, swap out one project for another? So I would say if you want to consider that, let's put it on the FY24 policies and strategies list. Or you can all vote tonight to totally redirect us. That's your prerogative.
well, I don't think we're ready to do that. Tyler, you wanted to say something?
No, I agree with Jesse's sentiment that this is a much larger conversation, and I would personally feel a lot more comfortable if this were part of a comprehensive strategic review. I saw that there's some members of the audience, I think it was Mr. Mittag, who was trying to raise his hand. I just want to make sure he was heard.
Right, I have a list of people. I like to have the council speak first.
Understood.
So, so Roseanne has been on the list for a while.
Thanks, councilors, for taking this up, because I raised this a while back, because I too heard people lamenting the fact that there wasn't much green in city center. And as Helen said, without a doubt, this was not the vision that the vast majority of people who participated years ago in the visioning for city center said they wanted. And we were warned by the consultant that we hired when we did this not to do a little patch of green. And it turns out that's exactly what happened. There's a little patch of green. And I also missed the decision that was made to reduce it. These buildings, for large part, they have no character and no charm. But I really support what Andrew and what Megan is saying about, regreening some of the area. It will, you remember when you dedicated City Center, it was so unbearably hot there. And you have created a heat island. That whole area, all the concrete, all the metal, steel that you put in there is going to make that area incredibly hot. Adding some more greenery, even if you have to re-green, is going to certainly help that. And imagine the people that will come there, across from City Hall and from the shopping areas to enjoy that green space where it will be cooler. That's going to be a real problem in the future. And the more green we have, the better we're going to be able to survive. So I really urge you to think think about a new way of doing things, not just build more. And that was the plan, and that's what you thought about in the past. You know, times are changing, and we are, you know, you all know about what we're dealing here. So I really think, you know, you can regreen. Other places have done it, and the more greenery you can add to that place, the more you will cool it off and be way more inviting. I won't go to. I mean, what's to do in I mean, if you live there, I guess you'll be in that area. But there's nothing to attract people to that area. But it's too hot anyway. So anyway, that's my views. I hope you take a different approach to this. I hope you continue the discussion and do some innovative things to make it look more. I do not think it's beautiful. It's my own personal opinion. If you had some trees, it might be more attractive. So thank you.
I think we had, what's his name, Kalaki, John Kalaki. Did you want to speak on this? I don't know if he had to sign off.
His camera's.
Is he still there?
He is there, but his camera's off.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll go to Michael Mittag.
Yes, thank you. Roseanne has said quite a lot of what I was going to say, but just to make sure we don't lose sight of the actual history of the visioning sessions, which were very intensely worked on by a lot of people in South Burlington. And the most important element of city centre was the so-called village green, which was seen as the place that would draw the city centre together, would be the real centre of activity. Places where people could go from a coffee shop and sit out on a bench under a tree and have a conversation with members of the community. So we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that many people are terribly disappointed that it never happened. I know, being on that form-based code committee, we had to explain to folks that if they want to do what they want, they have to buy the land. That you can't expect a developer to do what they would like to do, but maybe the city can do that, as Andrew has suggested. And then on the architectural style of the buildings that are there, yes, they're a bit boring. They're boxes. They don't have to be boxes or rectangles or squares. You can have curves in a building. You can have different window sizes, which lend variety to the look of a building. Obviously, you can change the type of cladding from one section of a building to another, but I really find I'm biased. I'm the son of an architect, so I know what can be done, and I don't see it being done. It's not these designs are not imaginative at all. They're just boxes plunked onto the countryside, onto the side of the street. It's really disappointing for me, since I spent 2 years on that committee. Now I have to live with it.
Okay, thank you. John Kalaki? No? Okay. This isn't your topic. All righty. Any comments from the people sitting in this room? Any final oh, Lisa?
I was just going to say.
Why don't you come up to the mic, please? So.
I actually have a nephew who is an engineer, and he works on like some of the structural part of a lot of buildings. And I had mentioned to him how a lot of the buildings being built lately all pretty much look the same, like the Larkin one down on Shelburne Road, you know, the way they're styled. And a lot of it has to do with, I think, saving money on the parts of the developers, because they get this nice plan. They know what to order for materials. They know what to expect. And that's part of it.
Yeah, I think that downtown Winooski, they have a curve. they have a little bit more variety. And that was my question. What does variety mean? And how do we recommend it? That question hasn't yet, I haven't gotten an answer to that. there an
Okay.
answer to it?
So can we?
Is there no
put this
answer
on
to
a
it?
Fiscal year 2024 work plan.
So
to
how
not lose it?
Well, we will have
Okay.
a retreat where we work
I
on
see.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a great time
Okay.
to do the visioning and discussion. And I mean, that's the best place, I think,
Okay.
to
way
add
priorities?
to or really think about
Yeah.
balancing our priorities and what those are.
Great. And I'm not an architect, but these buildings would be a lot nicer if they had balconies. I think.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute break. You already took one, I know. Well, some people can't.
But I haven't had my cannoli break yet.
Oh, right. Okay. Once again, the South Burlington City Council on April 17th, 2023. And we are now on item 11, another easy discussion. And it's so clear to all of us, I'm sure. And that is discussing the remaining $2 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding and a process for making those final decisions. So Jesse, you want to?
Sure. I do want to, not to shoot my team in the foot, but I do want to say, though, you have quite a hefty number of agenda items ahead of you still. This one is not time sensitive, so if you wanted to have a very quick conversation about this tonight, you could and come back to it at a future meeting. But high level, what we, as you may remember, back in January, the current council decided to hold off until the new council was seated to make further decisions about the remaining $2 million of available ARPA funding. The community did a survey last summer, and you have those results in your packet, and then asked all the committees to provide recommendations. You have those in your packets as well. So I think for staff, the key questions for tonight is what are the projects you identify as most transformational? What additional information do you need from us to help you make decisions? Are you interested in making decisions now, or would you like to wait for future budget cycles, future opportunities? And having said that there were no decisions to make tonight, there is one of the things you asked us to look at your November 30th meeting was how to best leverage funds. And the recommendation we got, we asked all the committees to think about that, was an opportunity for to use some $320,000 of the ARPA money to match a potential V-Trans bike ped grant for the expansion of the shared use path along Heinsberg Road, and which does have more time sensitivity because of the grant deadline.
So is that something we need to decide tonight?
So that is due June 9th, or June 9th. So we have some time to think about that, but it is also a grant application we do need to get to work on. So if it was a hard no, we would try and come up with some other options. But if it's a maybe, then we'll bring that back to you at a future meeting.
Well, why don't we have that conversation, and perhaps we can delay the agony around the ARPA funding to an evening when we don't have quite so many pressing things on the list. Because especially for the new members, that was a lot of stuff to read and sort of put in context, I think. But why don't we talk about the $320,000 for the matching for a grant that we may or may not receive, but the grant needs to say it will be matched. So what is your pleasure, committee?
That's the Heinsberg Road
Yeah.
sidewalk, which is a paved. I was mistaken when I last spoke about that, thinking that it was a concrete, but it's some kind of a pavement.
Right. It's blacktop.
It's not in great shape, and it's not. It could be wider if it was a true recreational pathway. So, I think that's a good investment along that busy road.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you need some more information about the project?
Well, do you have a master plan which kind of prioritizes?
Would you turn it on?
Do we have a master plan that prioritizes where we have the greatest need for shared use paths, or the greatest need to revitalize? And if so, has that risen to the top of the list? Is that why we're talking about it?
So there's a yes and. The first answer is there have been a history of studies. This one came out of a 2-phase feasibility study in 2015-ish and 2020 that looked at a number of priority areas citywide. And this was one area, which is why it'd be able to go straight to design and construction. It is scoped. But out of the climate action plan and the bike ped committee requests for a while, we should be, we haven't heard back officially from the CCRPC, but our plan is to start a citywide walk bike master plan that does that in much more detail over FY24.
So I guess in the absence of a master plan, is your perspective though that this particular path is the highest priority, or is the kind of the best use of funds right now from a bike and ped perspective?
I will just speak from the bike ped committee here, that this is one that's been on their docket for a while and has kind of moved around in the CIP.
Yeah, and this is considered renovation or repair. It's not considered to be a new piece of infrastructure because there's an existing.
Again, it's a yes and. It is replacing an existing facility, but it's replacing it with an upgraded and expanded facility. It would be taking out the 5-foot sidewalk, which kind of varies between concrete and asphalt, and creating a 10-foot asphalt path from Williston to Kennedy.
We couldn't use pennies for paths for this, in other words, is my question.
It is eligible for pennies for paths as well.
So why would we be using our ARPA funds instead of the penny for paths?
We could mix too.
This was just the project that the committee wanted to present, and now that the grant opportunity has opened.
But the funding, the match, potentially could be pennies for paths.
It was on the CIP.
Or ARPA, or a mixture.
Yes.
Oh.
Yep, the amount shown to you would be the full 20% of the full project. So just like applying for a grant, we'll take any amount, and this is the most we would need.
So what we're responding to here is your November 30th question about how do we make these dollars go fast or go farther? How do we stretch these dollars? How do we maximize the investment? And so I think how the bike ped came to this particular project was with $320,000 of ARPA here, we can buy $1.3 million worth of a project and save our pennies for paths for other projects that we may want to do. But it is eligible.
But the if pennies path were to fund the 300, you'd also be able to go forward with the grant proposal. It's not dependent upon using the ARPA funds.
Are there other FY24 allocations of those pennies already?
So this would be bumping up the timeline of this project because a lot of CIP projects had kind of already been filling in and using a lot of penny for path money. This was put forth as an ARPA recommendation because it was a few years out on the CIP, but the bike ped committee has really wanted to prioritize it as a lot of nearby projects move through design and construction.
Will they be angry with us if we use pennies for paths?
Will we have to walk back a committed FY24 project to use pennies in FY24 for this?
I haven't run the full numbers. I can't give a guarantee yes or no.
Okay. So maybe that's
we do have a fund balance and penny for paths.
It would be useful to see that.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we get that information before we make this decision, and then we would be able to feel more comfortable with both, I guess, bike and ped saying, yeah, that's fine, or maybe just use half of it, pennies for path, and the other half ARPA, and together we'll draw down 1.3 million. It's not an absolute given that we'll get the grant, right? I mean, so we've
been successful with this grant program in the past. It's the same grant program that is currently funding I believe the path on Spear Street. It's either Spear Street or Dorset Street. It's funding one of those. Spear Street, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So we have been successful with this grant program in the past, but it's never a guarantee.
Well, is that amenable to everyone?
Yep.
And then to not have the ARPA conversation tonight, but to think some more about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I will get that information.
Okay, we're almost
Thanks,
back on
Erica.
schedule.
Erica.
Thank you.
Penny and John may want to talk about this.
Oh, John, did you want to say something about this?
Yes, thank you. And I am eager to have a community conversation about the ARPA dollars because my understanding from when I was in the legislature, it is time dependent on when the money can be expended. So that we've now been postponing this, and so I think there is a time issue. It's also what's transformational and not what's plugging a budget gap is also key. And also, you know, I know we have a wonderful climate action plan, but I'm not sure that's to staff that is a use for ARPA funding because it's going to be an ongoing commitment. So I think there's a lot of questions about ARPA that the city council needs to really discuss fully and not make it piecemeal decisions on this. So I'm glad we put it off about this one pathway because I'm thinking that as compared to what, you know, so I am concerned that we keep delaying the conversation about this and that certain things seem like they're going to be a given in this $2 million that I just want to make sure the city lawyers are actually making sure that it's an appropriate use of ARPA dollars. So I'm eager to have the larger conversation in the community as well. So maybe we could, you know, consider, it might be an hour-long conversation with city council to really get this fully vetted and really look at these projects carefully. You know, the committees did spend time working on them and gave their best shot. So, you know, it may be a lot of information for the new counselors, but it was on the agenda tonight, so I'm sure they read it, you know. So we're not giving the due diligence that we need on this.
Okay, thank you. Penny?
I also attended because I knew this was on the agenda and it's in I am for the newer city councilors. I'm the chair of the Public Art Committee on which John also serves. And we, like the other committees, put in a small request. And I agree that we should have a proper conversation and also we shouldn't just keep, I mean, I gather there's a lot more urgent things, but we can't keep kicking it down the road because for example, in our committee, we've put goals in our FY24 plan and our request is a small one, but it is for us, it would be a transformational thing for the city to get support from outside to do a whole cultural plan for South Burlington. So, you know, we have a need and we need city council to weigh in on these needs of the various committees and what has been requested to use the ARPA funds for. So I don't mind that it kicks down the road if it's so we can have a more proper conversation. And while I have the floor, I will also just input to that last conversation. I didn't feel like it, but those buildings, they could do better. They really could do better on those buildings on Market Street. They're not, yeah, anyway.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you for the opportunity to speak.
You're welcome. Thank you. Just to clarify, my understanding is the ARPA money needs to be spent by the end of 2025. 26. So we do have some time to thoughtfully consider that. And I would agree with both of you that this is a very important conversation and we have some new counselors, and we should have that conversation. And I would also agree, John, to if we were to make it as sort of a really important item with a considerable amount of time, not at the end of our council meetings, but, you know, maybe in the middle or the beginning, then we could receive some public comments and have, I think, a needed and important conversation amongst the council. But tonight's probably not that night.
Thank you.
So we good to go on that? Okay. So now we'll move on to item 12, discussing S100. That will be Paul, I guess. Connor from Planning and Zoning. This is the, I guess, almost infamous housing, omnibus housing bill. So welcome again on this topic.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. So I don't have too much of an update from my end tonight. This is really for any further council discussion, but I am scheduled to testify to the House Committee on Natural Resources and Energy on Thursday morning, using your the council's guidance from February and March as my guidelines for that testimony, and I will be talking with them likely with some more specific ideas and language to sort of further narrow the subject area from our broad initial very broad concerns to more specific topics, to more specific language if the committee is so interested. So that's what I've got as my main update.
Okay. I'll be also testifying, and I think we'll do a similar kind of 1-2 punch as we did in the Senate. My remarks will be not as extensive about what South Burlington has done, but rather kind of representing the conversations really that the council has had. And then Paul hopefully will have the specific language that they can use to address our needs. So we'll see, but we're
Are
first.
you presenting together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What date and what time again?
Thursday, starting. I think we're at 9. That's
I
what.
just re-reviewed and said the Thursday morning session, so I don't have a specific time beyond that yet.
Well, Andrew sent me, the schedule that Ledge Council puts out, and it says we're at 9.
Okay. Well, it hasn't been sent to me yet, but I'm available
Well, they haven't
whenever
sent
they
it to me either, but.
They just posted it, and that's not broadcast live, right?
It's,
It is.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It is broadcast.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yeah. So you can.
It's a live stream.
So if there's any thoughts that the council wants to share right now to help advise this conversation, you know, we got the list of stuff we're concerned with.
Paul, were you able to draft some language? I know that one.
I have been working on some language that I'm in discussions with some various partners who we have been working on throughout this process with, to sort of refine and you know, put our best foot forward to the committee.
So is the plan to have that done before Thursday morning then?
Yes. Yep.
Will you distribute that before then?
Sure. I'd be happy to share it with you just as I share it with the committee. Absolutely. Yeah. Sure. Don't want council to be not getting it at the exact same time.
What is the sentiment at this point, taking the temperature of the House for the different segments of this bill? Do we have a sense yet?
Well, Michael Mittag and Andrew and I had a very candid and good discussion with the Natural Resources Council. And
Shoop?
Yes, and Katie
Gallagher.
And they were both very supportive of what we had to say, what our concerns were and why. And they said that we should both, or at least Paul, should go before the committee. No, actually, I said just Paul, and they said, no, you should go too, Helen. So the two of us are going. And they mentioned that to the Amy Sheldon and the chair. So we got on the agenda. You know, it's many of the people who testified in the Senate. I was reading some stuff this week, and I was like, oh my God, some of the articles in Digger and stuff were like, oh, this thing is just gonna shoot through. But I feel differently now from just the number of people that are going to be testifying and who they represent to the Committee on, is it Natural Resources and Energy? Is that their name? In the House. So
Environment and energy.
I'm more optimistic. I mean, I think it really shot through the Senate to get to cross over. And I'm hopeful that the House has slowed it down a little bit and will consider, some of our concerns. It seemed like it didn't fall on deaf ears, so we'll see.
What's the governor's opinion of this bill at this point? Do you know? Does anybody know?
He didn't like the changes to Act 250, so I don't know if he will even. I don't know if he'll sign it. Housing is such a huge issue.
Right.
Everyone wants to do as much as they can.
If you were to veto it, is there enough sentiment in the legislature to override it? That's the other question I have.
I don't know.
You don't.
That.
Okay, I don't.
John Kalaki, have you talked to any of your little friends over there and gotten any feedback?
Yes, I think coming in on Thursday with really specific language, as Paul mentioned, is going to be key. And really, it's now an energy and environment is the name of the committee. And so they are very concerned about the impact on the environment, much more so than the Senate was or the House committee that I sat on. And because what they did is only in the House committee just looked at the housing aspect and moved all the other concerns to Amy's committee. So, but this will be the chance to get any iterations out of this committee, because then it goes to the money committee after that. I think, Paul, you're right, that go in there with really specific so that someone on that committee or the chair or, a representative will put in an amendment that will be accepted in that committee is going to be key. And if it's too broad, it's too late for, I just reread the memo, and the memo was great when it was to the Senate, but now it's gone too far along. It has to really focus on the environmental issues to have any impact.
And the energy, yeah.
And the energy, yeah.
The building code.
Energy and Environment Committee, it's called now.
Okay.
So that's the designating the water and sewer districts and giving municipalities the ability to enact energy codes.
Right,
Well,
and not undermine whatever plan you have in place to both build housing and deal with the environment.
I'll be quiet about this, but the distinction is South Burlington is quite different than most. So most of our locales are not dealing with this issue in an equitable way. And so it's very difficult to give every locality what we're asking for South Burlington and have it be equitable across the state, which you all know. I think you know the dilemma. We're ahead of most of our communities. So that exclusion, that won't be given back, Megan, to local control from the state, I don't think. Anyway, you're not asking my opinion about that. Anyway, thanks.
I just want to note that, John, I love that you have the resolution up behind you. That's the resolution the council gave
Yes.
all your best.
Nice.
Thank you.
He
Meant a
puts a
lot to me.
different one up behind him depending on the audience, right?
Do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Michael, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I think the energy codes issue that as it stands now has been kicked down the road. They're not going to write what they originally planned. They're going to establish a committee to study the issue. So we're not at risk yet.
I didn't see that in S100. I saw both.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Michael.
I don't understand why the state would stand in the way of policy that is following best practices, industry, best practices for architecture and engineering. I don't understand.
And the most critically important thing,
Yeah, for
Bizarre.
stormwater and for heating and cooling. When we have national associations making policy statements, and advocating for these things, I don't understand why Montpelier, is not allowing that policy to be adopted.
Well, state policy is often very blunt, and this is some blunt language.
Yes.
But I guess if the state were taking action, it would also be different. But the state has been, basically paralyzed on climate action. And
Right.
the action's been at the municipal level.
Right.
And to thwart the ability of municipalities to take action is just indefensible.
It is. It is.
Yeah, especially since they started it. They came up with the state plan and told us to come up with ours aligned with that. So we did. Yeah.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And the other thing I guess that I would stress is, in addition to the environment, is, since equity is a big part of this bill, I really think that our rules, which aren't perfect, but what I do really appreciate about them is that you cannot distinguish affordable from market rate housing in these multiplex developments. And I don't know that the state rules would at all support that. That doesn't come through. And I think you were expressing some concern, Paul, about just having the extra floor added. And I still don't know how this will work with our, statute-supported rules on using transfer development rights. And there's just so much that could, be up in the air. And all of this is based in state statute, what we have done. So some kind of clause, where this does not supersede, state statute, or, things, I mean.
Yes, it is.
It boggles my mind.
It does. Well, we'll try our best. Okay. Well, thank you.
Keep you posted.
Well,
Yeah,
it gives a little direction. I mean, we've been headed in the same direction for a couple months now, so I guess you're affirming that you want us to keep going along those lines, and we will try our best.
Yeah. Okay.
Moving on to item 13, which is updates to the amendments to the land development regulations, and possibly set a public hearing for May 15th, 2023.
Yes, Paul Connor, Director of Planning and Zoning. Jessica Luisos, Chair of the Planning Commission. Michael Matag, also on the Planning Commission, are here as well. The council at your last meeting requested that the City Council, the City Council at your last meeting asked that the Planning Commission take a look at some language, both what you had looked at a couple of weeks ago that would sort of put a few more parameters on redevelopment of existing impacted areas and wetlands, and also what would a simplified process solely for the purpose of maintaining existing conditions where there might be erosion or something like that taking place. So the Planning Commission did review some language prepared by staff. They made a couple of tweaks to it to tighten the box on the redevelopment to make sure that it is very clear that in the circumstance of any redevelopment that the amount of impervious surface is not increased. In your cover memo, I said it the opposite way. That is not the way I meant to, but the language itself says that there cannot be an increase in impervious surface, just to be very clear in any redevelopment scenario. And then recommended that the council proceed with those amendments. We ran it through legal counsel, and they had some minor tweaks to make sure that the language is paralleling other language in our regulations, so it doesn't read exactly the way that the Planning Commission had reviewed it, but they included in their motion that a legal review and tweaks would be appropriate. So that's what I've got.
Any questions or thoughts? This is kind of what we talked about, and I think it responds to those concerns as fully as we can. Jessica, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess, one of the things that had come up at the council meeting, at your last meeting when you discussed this was, a particular situation on a property owner who had spoken to you. And I think that one of the things that we were looking at was to try to address that type of scenario. And we think that this does it. In the case of a stabilization, like an existing feature that needed a stabilization. So it's part of the new language. And then in the case of the other area that's in the yellow, I think we'd also heard from you a concern about situations where there might be an increase in impervious surface within a wetland buffer. So we did add that additional, more strong language.
And I believe the Planning Commission was unanimous.
Of
That's
the
what I
members
recall.
present.
At least the people who were there. It wasn't a.
Yeah, there
It was
well,
almost
we were
everyone
missing
there.
one, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Just quickly. I will vote for this language, but to wordsmith just for a moment, in the new Section 5 stabilization, I think it could be improved a tad if it said the applicant has to demonstrate that the encroachment is necessary and represents the least possible impact. Like, it doesn't say anything about needing to do it. If I had my druthers, I think I would add the words that the encroachment is necessary but if it's too hard to add those words, I will vote for this.
You know what he's saying, Paul?
Following that,
Yeah.
Paul?
So it's stabilization of pre-existing conditions, encroachment into these various different resources for the sole purpose of stabilizing a previously approved pre-existing structure. The applicant shall demonstrate that the encroachment represents the least possible impact to the specific resource. And you're suggesting that it's necessary.
That the encroachment is necessary and represents. If I had my druthers, but I will vote for this as it stands as well.
I don't have any problem adding that. That specific sentence comes from a little bit later, a page down under restricted infrastructure encroachments. So it talks about where there might be driveway impacts, and it parallels that language exactly. The necessary in that case is met by 4 other clauses that have to be met. So if you wanted to add the word necessary here, I don't think it doesn't harm anything. And I think the least possible impact would be no impact. But I don't have a problem with a clarifying of adding that word. if that's what the council chooses to do. And I guess I would say if you're going to do it now rather than after your public hearing, because after your
Yes.
public hearing, if you add the word, you have to hold another public hearing.
Yeah.
So that would be my only piece of
Well,
advice.
what
on
is your pleasure? Does Colin, do you have any thoughts on that? Does that turn the tables?
I have not reviewed this language previously tonight, so I can look at it on the fly. I don't have an opinion right now.
Okay.
I would share also with you, if you're going to amend it now.
Amend it now. How about you, Jessica?
On the word necessary, I'm not a lawyer, but to me, it doesn't seem like it makes a significant difference in the language because it already has the least possible impact. So I don't see that as a big change from our end.
I'd rather leave it the way it is.
Because
Because it's already been written and the planning commission passed it out. So I don't want to wordsmith the planning commission's words. That's not our job, unless there's something really that's stands out that is a problem.
Okay.
Other thoughts? Is that okay? All right.
I don't feel strongly.
Did you want to speak to? I mean, my feeling is you have to do so much to get here that you wouldn't do it if it wasn't
Here comes
necessary.
the big folder.
Pardon?
The big folder.
Yeah. Just.
Hi, I'm Kathy Easton, and once again, we're so appreciative of what you're doing and all that Paul has done. I have to say honestly, so we went to the planning.
We went to the planning commission meeting on the 11th, and language was presented at that time. And it was presented and voted for 5-0 with a caveat that it would have to be run by the attorneys. And so when I looked at the new language, the first 4 lines are virtually identical. The next 7 lines are different. Not being an attorney myself, I can't tell you exactly what impact that has. It looks like it would work. Our sole goal for ourselves and other property owners was to have language in the regulations that would allow people to maintain and stabilize their properties. I share Mr. Barrett's concern about inserting other words at this point, such as necessary. I'm not certain what adding the word necessary would help, and I wonder whether it would open a door to someone saying to you, well, you don't really need that. It may become that kind of an issue. So at some point, we have to trust our city staffers to come up with language that works. And we've only had this afternoon to really look at this, so I can't say, but it appears as though it would do what you all have worked so hard to do so far. So we appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? So it sounds like we'll go with this. And then I need a motion to set a public hearing. I guess I can make it. So I move that the City Council set a public hearing for May 15th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. to on the amendments to the land development regulations.
Second.
Is that?
Yep, and let me just add the number LDR 2209
Okay.
just for the minutes.
For
And this will
LDR.
be the including the modification from this evening.
Okay.
Yep.
So we've a motion and a second. Are you ready for the vote? Oh, Tyler, or you just turned it on so we can hear your vote? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Felt like we just had a baby, huh? The 14, item 14, discuss the process to make the FY24 appointments to policy and regulatory committees.
All right. So I know this is a little messy. So we have a lot of appointments to make. We have heavy agendas already, as we are witnessing tonight. So after talking with a few folks, I tried to think through some options for you all to consider. I'm sorry there are so many of them. I didn't feel like I had a strongly held opinion about what to recommend, so Colin and I put them all in there. So just to give you the highlights, 37 openings, that's 50 or 60 potential applicants, that's 13 to 15 hours of your time. We do recommend that you keep as a full body the Planning Commission and the DRB because of their statutory roles. So the options are really speaking to the policy committees that you establish. So I can walk you through them. I will also say there are several other changes other than just the options. We also are recommending that whoever interviews folks use an interview script with a matrix that we will give to you as a tool. We also wanted to call your attention to a note on the Planning Commission. We've gotten off kilter with the staggered terms, and we do have an opportunity to fix that this go around. So we'd have 3 positions revolving each year. Now we're on a 2 and 4 schedule.
It would become 2 each year instead of a 1 and 3 currently.
Okay.
So that's outlined in your memo. You can read it. So
what
would
do
you like me to walk through options, or are people pretty clear on
Would
what
the
they are?
council like that?
Sorry, one other table setting point. The intention is, regardless of what option you select, the full council will see every applicant that applies for a position.
See, what do you mean see?
You won't.
You'll
if
see
you
their
choose not,
application?
Yeah, if you choose for the full council not to interview everybody, the full council will still receive all the applications, and the full council will ultimately vote on all of the appointments. You're not delegating that decision out. You're just delegating the interview process and the recommendation process.
So you have several different ideas, so is one idea to have at least 2 counselors for each committee that's not DRB, not Planning Commission, to do evaluations at a different time other than a city council meeting? And
I would like there to be a majority of the council actually on these committees.
Well, that's option 2, to have 2 members. Option
No, that's
3.
option 4.
Well, 3 members would be.
Oh, that's right.
you have to
I'm
be
sorry.
warned if you do 3.
Right.
Yeah.
So if
I
you
don't
do,
mind it warned.
we would recommend if you do 2. Well, Colin can weigh in on this, but we went back and forth about this. If you do 3, you certainly have to warn a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
You could do 3 as a full council with only a quorum present, or you could create a subcommittee of 3 and warn it as a subcommittee. You could also create a subcommittee of 2 counselors and warn it as a subcommittee meeting. Or you could just task 2 counselors with going to do some work and coming back, which I think you probably don't want to do, but did I further complicate it?
No. So it sounds like, Tim, you're thinking that option 4 is what you like.
We already have,
Megan, go
one
ahead.
counselor per committee, right?
Yep.
So I'm just throwing this out there. If you had you want at least 2 sets of eyes to do the interviews and then report back, because we're going to have one meeting where we're going to have to go through all this matrix to figure out who to put on the committees. But Megan, you're thinking you want 3 eyes.
Yeah, I think it's important for the majority of the council to be there so that it's not a minority opinion recommending.
The full council will still get to vote.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
right.
What
But
these
without the benefit of
3-person
having the
committee would
conversation.
come back with is, okay, we looked at these, if we have 2 of them, we looked at these 6 committees, and for affordable housing, we're recommending X and Y, and then we would all discuss that, and that subcommittee who interviewed them they'd have a matrix and then defend their decision, which the full council could say no. I read through all the.
That won't happen, Helen. Come on. Every time someone makes a recommendation. I mean, it's
I like
usually.
option 1.
Option 1?
I mean, we've got liaisons, we've got a chair, and I think it's okay to delegate the kind of filtering as long as the slate comes back to the full council.
So like the Affordable Housing Committee
It's like-minded
chair.
people choosing like-minded people. I really think a majority brings in much more diversity to really not just create a club. I really am concerned about that kind of thinking.
Tyler?
I agree. I agree with Megan. I'm partial to option 4 or 5 for those
I like
reasons
3.
where
I like 3, Tyler, just so you know.
3. Well, if I'm understanding option 4 correctly, though, multiple committees of 2 counselors, at least that way it's achieving somewhat of the same aims. Is that correct? And that you have groups of 2 that are going about this, and it's dividing and conquering versus where there's still somewhat of a balance of power. In that there's multiple people making the decision.
Yeah. I get it, but I'm leaning toward 3. I know
Three's a good option, but the other half of the story is the structure of the interview process itself, which is in here, right?
Right.
Which is a time limit, right? The same set of questions for every person, right? And not to let somebody who's being interviewed go on for 10 minutes.
Right.
But we're friendly. We like to talk to people and hear what they have to say, and then sometimes the conversation just goes off course, and that's okay. But when you've got 12 or 16 people you have to interview in one night, that's when it takes an hour and a half. So,
but sometimes an answer does lead to another question.
It does.
And in order to really understand, sometimes a follow-up question is required. I mean, being held in, a straitjacket, I'm only allowed to ask these 4 questions.
No. But I mean, the structure list starts the conversation.
No.
So
Or me, for that matter.
a list of questions that starts the conversation, right? So that at least everybody gets the same question.
Yep.
And then the conversation goes from there. But it just shouldn't be 15 minutes for an individual, and I mean, some people don't talk very much, right? And so it might.
And then others go on and on. Yes. And that's probably my fault for not.
No, Helen, you've done. I think you've
cut off the conversation.
I think no, but I think you've ensured that similar questions be asked of the candidates. I think,
well, sort of, but not as quite as prescribed. And I like the 3 you came up with.
These were Andrews.
Or Andrews.
This is what you asked when we were interviewing the candidates for Planning Commission. You said, I'm going to ask 3 questions of everybody. And they were great questions. I was like, writing those down.
Oh, good. Okay. So he'll support it. Let's see.
Just the questions. The rest of it, no.
All right. So we will have that format. And so that'll help. And this would be sort of a meeting that you hold some other evening. Is that right? Is that what we're thinking?
Yes.
So, some day in June or whenever, or May, 3 of us will sit down with the other people. Did that include other people from the committees?
So I would say that the relevant staff liaisons and committee chairs would be invited to attend all of the relevant ones, which we pretty much do anyway for council meetings. And that we would also, Paul and I have been talking about this, solicit from the committee chairs any feedback they have on what the committee needs in terms of makeup, as well as attendance challenges.
Okay. Well, or maybe the attendance of a returning, a returnee who is Yeah. All right. Does that satisfy everyone?
One more option for streamline. If you have a committee that has more slots open than applicants, or an equal number of applicants and slots, so you pretty much know who you're going to be selecting. Wondering whether we could streamline that process a little bit and leave it to the
That's also
liaison.
an interesting question. Let's say that there is an applicant that the council does not believe should be on that committee, but there's the same number of candidates as there are spots. Are we obligated out of courtesy? No.
Nope.
Okay.
I don't think we're obligated. I think we're
But
looking
to your point.
for the best group of candidates and,
But do you need three? I mean,
well, it might go really fast then, you know, so
yeah.
So
that will not happen with all of the committees.
No, but
I don't think.
happens quite a bit.
I also think you might face, depending on how you do the 3 and 3, you might face, the council has before for committees that have lots of applicants with fewer seats, redistributed folks. So we may just need to pay attention to that in the committees a bit.
Well, that could be one of the questions that's at the end that we ask, you know, add that. If,
Is there another committee?
if you're not selected for this committee, are there other committees you'd like to serve on? We've been doing that for years. It's great. And we can recommend some.
And interview them on the spot for that.
Well, you probably can if it's one of your committees that.
Okay, option 3, timeless script, attendance and needs, 4 questions. Colin, do you want to make the point about the legal point about the 3 committees as a subcommittee versus 3 members as the council?
Sure. So what we were talking about is similar to if you created a 2-person subcommittee, you'd have the option of creating a 3-person subcommittee, or you can actually just have a council meeting and have only 3 people show up. So those are really the 2 options that are talked about in option 3. If you create a 3-person subcommittee, that is the committee, and so a quorum of that subcommittee is 2 out of the 3. Or with a council meeting, if 3 show up, 3 is your quorum, and you're having a council meeting.
So if you create a 3-person subcommittee, then you're fine, assuming you're okay with a 2-person quorum. If you're not okay with a 2-person quorum and Warner as a council meeting, you have to be very careful that you're only talking about committee interviews.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. That was a very important point. I think you have to be very careful that that is exclusively what you're talking about. You can't, in your conversations, like, oh, we should talk about this at our next council. It would be good to talk about this at our next council meeting. You shouldn't have those conversations because those aren't warned for that meeting. The whole purpose of the meeting is just interviews.
Well, I think I like the 3-person committee, so the vote could be 2 to 1, and then you'll get it done. I mean, unanimity doesn't always reign.
Right.
What do you mean 2 to 1?
Well, if it's a subcommittee
Right.
of the 3 members, as I understand it, then
You just need 2.
majority rules. If it's a regular, if we're not making it a subcommittee, if we just say the council's gonna have a special meeting on, you know, Tuesday, Tuesday, only 3 of us will show up, and then you have to have all 3.
Right. So you're just saying that 2 is a quorum on the committee. That's
Yes.
okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I thought you were saying vote 2 to 1. I'm like,
No.
we're not voting at that point. There's the whole council's voting on the.
Well,
assignment.
we will be voting to who the subcommittee is recommending.
Oh, as a recommendation. I see what
Yeah,
you're saying.
I mean, I hope there's a recommendation rather than we interviewed everyone and man, I don't know.
Let me read to you what each person said.
Yeah, exactly.
I've lived here for 24 years, and
Right. So are we okay with 3 then?
3-person subcommittee. So I think you should take, I think, Colin, that they should take a vote to create 2 3-people subcommittees.
Okay.
For the purposes of interviewing candidates to serve on policy committees.
So when are we planning
Yes.
to do these interviews?
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Ideally, I think you do them sometime between the middle of May and the middle of June so you can approve the candidates' slates June 19th. What I will need from you is, this is going to be it would be ideal for me if there were 2 3s and we just assign committees to the two groups. So are you okay with me just trying to do that magic as much as possible to get the liaisons lined up appropriately? Okay. Thank you. More to come.
And just for the warning again, I think I made the warning for when you meet as a full council. If you're meeting as the committee of 3 and there's 3 of you present, that is a quorum of the council. So make sure you're only operating within the charge of the committee, which is to do the interviewing and not talk about council business at the same time.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Nag, nag.
Okay, is everyone okay with that? Do we need a, so we need a motion?
So I would recommend you make a motion to establish 2 subcommittees of the council made up of 3 councilors for the sole purpose of interviewing candidates for your appointed policy committees.
I'll make that motion. We don't have to designate who? Do we designate who?
So I need to go through and figure out which 3 of you best overlap. So who wants to be on, I guess I do need to know who wants to go
Who
to
wants to be
all
on
the
both?
interviews.
Right, one person has to be on
Well, I
both.
want to know who's going to be on the one committee because I want to be on that committee. You know.
So what I'm trying to figure
Probably the chair should be on both, right?
I would say the chair, I would think that the chair should be on both.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I will do that, hoping
Thank you.
everything works out in terms of my.
All right.
So we have a motion?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
And then you will get back to us with the grid and the now 4 questions.
Yep. And I will send out some scheduling emails about when to actually schedule those subcommittees and what combination of you will be on the 2 committees. Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry
so
if I
can I suggest that when you do make some of those committee assignments, you know, like which committees each group is going to watch, if you'll think about someone who might apply for one committee and we have too many people, what's another complementary committee?
Yeah, I mean,
so then we could, since we're interviewing both sides, would have the knowledge that, you know, we still have an opening on Parks and Rec, so maybe I'd like to consider that.
Absolutely. And I'm happy if the 5 of you want to do that now, kind of batch the committees, or Helen, you and I could work on it together and make those decisions.
I'm fine with helping you. People can always email me and with their ideas. But we can do that. That wouldn't be hard.
And are you comfortable with us working towards the planning commission smooth out?
Yes, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I also think at some point when these 2 subcommittees are working, at one of the council meetings, we need to do planning commission and the DRB. So there will be a full council hearing those applicants.
Right
in
now
the
I
same
have that
time frame.
on June 5th at the regular council meeting. On
Right.
June 5th.
That's what I would recommend. Does that sound okay?
We just did this. A year's gone by? Come on.
When you have this much fun, the time flies.
All right, thank you very
Okay.
much. I know that was a lot.
All right, now I would entertain a motion to convene as the South Burlington Liquor Control Commission.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have before us 1, 2, 3, 4.
You want a motion?
Yep,
I'll
5.
move that we approve the various liquor licenses for Charlie's, Chicken Charlie's, Dave's Cosmic Subs, and all the rest of the businesses listed in item 15 of our agenda tonight.
But did they give you money to say their names on? I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
I do want to just point out there's one that you are approving tonight, Parkway Diner, that has not yet paid their fee. And we have just noted in your resolution that approval for that one is contingent upon receipt of payment.
Okay,
Yes.
Good.
that's amenable. All right, did we vote yet? No.
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any new business or other
you want to
business?
We have to come out of Liquor Commission.
Yeah, I'll move to come out of Liquor Control
yes.
Commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. One last other item very quickly. Counselor Corner, Megan is going to do April, but we need May. We can do, 4 more, May, June, July, and August.
What was that?
Counselor Corner.
Oh, right, yes.
So who would like to do the thing in May?
I just did one.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd be in June
Pardon
or
me?
July. I'd be happy to do it in June or July.
Okay, so Tyler, why don't you do June?
Got it.
Okay. Do you want to do May?
I'm happy to.
Okay, Andrew will do May,
Do July.
Tim will do July, and I'll do August. Okie doke.
Is it the first week in May, or when is it usually?
It's anytime, but it usually goes out towards the end.
You
of
know,
the
they're
month.
very,
Anytime.
they used to be, and now it's like whenever you send it in,
Well,
kind of.
it's
But they like
got-
it once a month,
by
but,
Monday is really the deadline, I think, pretty much.
I drafted something for the planning commission, and that was about it.
oh. Okay, so adjourn?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
All right,
Good night.
Something else I want to talk about.
we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
you.
Tyler.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks. I was
Is
so
that
late.
your car or is that somebody else's?